set? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the March 29th, 2011 meeting of the Town of Wareham Board of Selectmen Sewer Commissioners. I will call the meeting to order and ask for a clerk, please.
Madam Chair, I would make a motion to have Kara be the clerk for the evening.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much, Kara. Appreciate that. Do we have any announcements? I don't think we do. And the first order of business I have this evening is I'd like to ask Mr. Connor White from the Upper Cape Regional Vocational Technical School to come forward, please. Thank you for being with us tonight, Connor. The Town of Wareham and the Board of Selectmen would like to offer congratulations to Mr. White. He's been selected as one of a very small number of students to be recognized in his field. And in that regard, the resolution reads, whereas Mr. Connor White has demonstrated strong leadership skills in the field of plumbing and heating and has achieved Outstanding Vocational Student of the Year on April 14th, 2011. Whereas Mr. Connor White has endeavored to reach to the highest standards of academic achievement. Whereas Mr. Connor White has excelled to meet professional goals in the plumbing, heating, and ventilation arena. Whereas Mr. Connor White had worked hard to reach the highest level of academic achievement. In witness thereof, we, the Wareham Board of Selectmen, have hereunto set our hands and caused the official seal of the Town of Wareham to be affixed this 29th day of March 2011. Thank you, Connor, and congratulations. Connor will be very soon graduating from Upper Cape Cod Regional School, and it's great to see what good work they're doing down there. We have a presentation from the school this evening in a little bit, so without further ado, we'll carry on with our agenda. Thank you again, Mr. White. You're very welcome. Hey, the next item on the agenda is citizens' participation. Is there anyone who wishes to come before the board this evening? Ladies first, we have Mrs. Bronk, and then we'll have the gentleman in the front row.
Good evening, ladies.
Good evening.
I would like to ask a question. If the, I don't know if you're able to answer it. I'd like to know if the finalist for the assessor's job has been, have you picked the finalist yet, and who are they?
Mr. Andrews, would you like to address the question?
Sure, sure thing, Madam Chair. The process has wound down. We had the last interviews done on last Thursday, looking at the grading sheets, and I will be picking the top 3 to come in for an interview very shortly.
You can't tell us who they are?
I don't have the top 3 yet.
Gentleman in the front row.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the board, viewers at home. My name is Bob Brady, and I have some concerns as a citizen relative to the nitrogen management in the town of Wareham. I'm here to address those concerns, and first, just a brief recap. I will need a few minutes of your time. Prior to December of 2009, there were a number of attempts to adopt regulations to manage...
Excuse me, Mr. Brady. We have a hearing scheduled for 7:15. How long do you think you're going to take? And is there some reason why you didn't request to be on the agenda this evening?
I didn't know I needed to. I'm here as a citizen and a volunteer.
Okay.
Okay.
Because you said you were going to take a few minutes of our time, so...
I'll be done by 7:15.
And just so people at home know, any citizen can ask to be on the agenda at any time. It's not a closed agenda process, so that would...
And they can also come in during citizens' participation.
Yes, and they can
Very
also
nice.
come in during citizens' participation. Thank you.
Perfect. Again, before December of 2009, a number of attempts failed to adopt regulations in an effort to manage nitrogen in Wareham. Subsequently, a Clean Water Committee was established which I'll get into in a minute or two. In December of 2009, I was invited to join 40 or so citizens to participate in a nitrogen consensus group effort to draft an action plan to address nitrogen loading as we know it. As I recall, Ms. Ekstrom, you were part of that selection process. And after 6 months, a plan was developed and consented to by nearly half the participants in that effort, and presented to the Board of Selectmen and by the Coalition of Buzzards Bay on August 24th last year. I'd like to know, first of all, before I go on, have any or all of you read that plan? Yes? You've read the plan? Then I'm certain you know the plan.
And we did have an extensive report on the plan in front of the board, if you
Good.
recall.
I just wanted to make certain, for the record. So you know that the plan had a consented phased approach to what actions should be addressed relative to the management of nitrogen. The plan, as presented, is about a 40-page document and broken into 2 phases. Phase 1, very quickly, was to finalize what the town of Wareham has started in sewering a number of neighborhoods in the town of Wareham. Second step was to hope to amend the permit in order to reduce the load in the river, the Wareham River, from 4 milligrams per liter to 3. Then we were to take as many of the mobile home parks as possible and bring them in compliance with the state wastewater regulations. And then finally in phase 1, we were also going to identify the capacity of the plant in an effort to dedicate that capacity to additional existing densely developed neighborhoods, such as a Gateway Shores, maybe a Garden Homes North, etc. Then phase 2, which is identified to be a course of action to take place during the years 2012 to 2014, we were to address issues relative to new growth. And we all consented to engage and support the Wareham Planning and Health Boards in developing new zoning, subdivision, and health regulations to require that new developments meet this nitrogen zero standard. This will likely require giving developers the opportunity to offset nitrogen, et cetera, et cetera. Instead of adhering to this phased recommendation, we, on October 25th, which is one day after this plan was presented to the Board of Selectmen, there was a Clean Water Committee vote to petition the warrant to amend the bylaws accordingly. Not a whole lot of input went into it, clearly wasn't part of our phased recommendation, and accordingly, since then, many of us have continued to volunteer our time and efforts to draft regulations to eventually present to the Board of Health in hopes of engaging in some public hearings, discussion, and eventual adoption of regulations. Since then, as written and voted, the amended bylaw neglects to address the crossover of responsibility between zoning, planning, Conservation Commission, and only targets Board of Health regulations as it pertains only to new construction greater than 3,300 gallons per day of wastewater discharge. Because of the strict guidelines approved, we've struggled with drafting comprehensive regulations. We've remained committed with the coalition to meet the challenge, but the bylaw has caused more hardship than not. First and foremost, it's still not yet approved by the Attorney General's office, and indications are that it will likely not be approved as written and voted. In fact, they have requested a 90-day extension accordingly. Most recently, on March 21st, the chairman of the Clean Water Committee has formally submitted a number of complaints against me and others as volunteers of a task force for allegedly violating the open meeting law. The most recent is the question of whether or not the article is legal, and accordingly, aside of these issues, I have my own concerns. I'm not certain that there was any authority in the first place to identify or to establish a Clean Water Committee, and I'm curious to know, as per the charter, why the moderator then wasn't the one to make said appointments, and I believe it takes an active town meeting. More concerning to me is the legal costs associated with this continued effort. At our last meeting 2 weeks ago, the chairman of the Clean Water Committee presented copies of emails which were exchanges he's had with representatives from Copeland and Page, legal counsel, on Sunday evenings at 9 and 10 o'clock. And accordingly, there's no record of any meeting minutes or discussions in the Clean Water Committee authorizing him to do so. My concern is that I know there's a policy established by the administrator that nobody consults with counsel without consent. So if in fact one man, it seems, has consent, I'd like it to be known here now, and I'd like to know why it is that he is able, especially when the Coalition of Buzzards Bay has counsel on staff providing their services for free. So in closing, I need you all to be aware of the things that are going on, the issues that we face, and the one request I have, as per the complaint, is that I have 7 business days to request any and all documentation. I'd like to know if there is any such documentation that officially appointed me and all of those other volunteers, and if any of us have been sworn in, I'd like the documents that represent that. Upon receipt of those documents, I will then formalize my response to the Attorney General's office, and hopefully we will get this process on track and in the best interest of Wareham. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brady, for presenting your concerns. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak before citizens' participation this evening? Mr. Fonce, please.
Good evening. Ken Fonce, Onset. I'm also here as the president of the Onset Cape Verdean Festival Association. I have 2 things, Madam Chair. One is a letter from Tiny Lopes, who is our program coordinator and community relations. I'm not going to read the letter based on the time we have, but I'd like to submit that to you and Mr. Andrews on the request of Mr. Lopes. But I do have a couple of comments, and what I'm here for is our support for Chief Stanley. First of all,
How long is the letter, Mr. Fonce?
it's about 4 or 5 paragraphs.
Why don't you go ahead and read it, please?
I
I don't
knew
want
you
to
were gonna make me
disappoint
do
Mr. Lopes.
Now, this letter is from Tiny Lopes, resident of Onset. He says, last summer, following the Cape Verdean Festival, I wrote an article to the newspaper stating that, in my opinion, the town of Wareham got it right when Rick Stanley was appointed chief of police. I said he was a man of his word. My statement was based on a meeting with the Onset Cape Verdean Festival Board, which was held in June with Chief Stanley. At that time, the chief stated emphatically that the bill of services rendered for the officers on duty at the festival would be significantly reduced. My initial concern after hearing the statement was, how could he do this without sacrificing the services required for the festival? He stated that he had a plan and to trust him, it would work. The chief was confident that the officers would be more visible, proactive, and professional, a standard that he emphasizes. Needless to say, our festival was a success, and I attribute a great deal of our success to the leadership and the plan implemented by the chief. In my opinion, the relationship that he has nurtured with the officers he supervises and with the community leaders is genuine and much needed at this time. All anyone had to do last summer was walk around Onset Village and witness the interaction with the officers and the youth, the tourists, as well as all the residents. Many people I spoke with commented on what a difference a year made. There's a new rapport and positive interaction that made families and visitors feel secure in our beautiful seaside village. Yes, problems did come up, but the visibility and the manner in which they were addressed made me proud to be from Onset. The job is not done here. I strongly lend my support to a man I can trust. Chief Stanley wants to be here. We need his expertise and team-building skills as we address the issues in our diverse community. Lastly, when I mentioned last summer that I was ashamed of the physical appearance along Onset Ave, especially with the number of visitors coming in for our festival, Chief Stanley called me up and said he wanted to be included in the cleanup of our streets. He stepped up. He cares about our town and the image that we need to move forward. I'm fully aware that the town of Wareham faces difficult decisions during these challenging economic times. However, Chief Stanley has earned his stripes in our community. Wareham needs a win-win scenario in this endeavor if possible. Let's not step back. My sincere thanks, Tiny Lopes. I'll submit that to you.
Thank
And
you, Mr. Fons.
I just have a couple comments. It'll take 2 minutes. The chief has been very visible in the town, being the president of the Cape Verdean Festival. Everything went smooth. He was easily accessible last year. Whenever we wanted to find the chief, it was not a problem. Matter of fact, all you had to do is look in the food court and you would find him sitting there. I spoke to the chief and Lieutenant Walsh about problems we had at outdoor basketball. The very next day, bike officers were there. So he said he would have it done, and he did. The coordination between the two has been absolutely fantastic. I understand that in negotiations, in my job, I do negotiations. I've done hundreds and hundreds of contracts, that Chief Stanley has a number and Mr. Andrews has a number. I get all of that. But in closing, I just want to say that when Chief Stanley and Mr. Andrews agree on a number, for the sake of Wareham, I hope that number is not 495 North back to North Andover. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fons. The next item we have on our agenda is a hearing, 7:15 p.m. Is the Buzzards Bay Play Productions. Would you come forward and identify yourself for the record, please? Thank you. May I have a motion to open the hearing? Okay. I thought it was a real hearing.
You scared me with the word hearing.
I know. Well, that's what it says
It's
on the
only-
agenda. I thought it was a real hearing, but I guess it's just make-believe.
Good evening. My name is Janice Rogers. I am the owner of Buzzard Play Productions.
Good evening.
Good evening. And you are seeking a license?
Yes, for entertainment.
Would you like to tell us a
Madam
little
Chair.
bit about your business?
Sure.
Mrs. Winslow?
Excuse me. It was advertised as a hearing.
Okay, so we have to open.
So I make a motion that we open the hearing on the application from Janice Rogers, doing business as Buzzards Bay.
No, it's Buzzard Play
Buzzards.
Productions. It's
Buzzard.
a little play on words.
Oh, that's going to be tricky for people.
Okay,
But
Buzzard.
once you know it, you'll know it.
We'll never forget it.
Buzzards
That's right.
Play Productions?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
For a public amusement on weekdays license, public entertainment on Sundays license.
Is there a second? All in favor? The hearing is open.
Aye.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about your
Certainly.
opportunity to provide us with amusement?
Buzzard Play Productions is a community theater in which all aspects of the arts would be produced. Drama, comedy, and musical productions would be performed on an open stage by actors and musicians of all ages. Through this venue, children and adults would be able to develop the understanding and appreciation for the theater arts, which will foster a development of teamwork, leadership skills, and confidence. The theater would offer workshops for budding actors and veteran actors alike. Through workshops such as theater games, creative movements, choreography, and vocal direction, the actors will learn the proper techniques for a successful performance. On display in the gallery would be creative works by local artists and craftsmen. This will allow their works to be viewed and purchased to promote advancements of their special gifts and talents. Musicians of all aspects will showcase their musical talents. Through live performances, they can hone their share and share their love of music while gaining valuable confidence and exposure on stage. That's what I prepare to do.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions for Ms. Rogers? Mrs. Winslow?
I'm just curious about the hours that you
Sure.
set, 12 to 12.
I know. To be honest with you, I had no idea what to do. Through this, with the theater games, I would have to do them after school, okay? But then I've also had a few parents come to me in regards to, students, children ages 4, 5 years old, where they would be getting out of like a morning, preschool or something like that, and could I offer something in the early afternoon? And I said, okay, that would probably be around what time? And then plays and things that can be put on can go anywhere. I've had some of my shows go to at least 9:30, almost 10 o'clock at night, depending on what I've put on. Then by the time you clean up and everything, so that's where it definitely was a broad range. But that was why I don't know exactly, on any given day,
Well, I love your concept, and if my daughter, who's home watching, is probably jumping up and down going, Mommy, I want to do this, but you're not planning on having music or entertainment at 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. That's
No,
more
it
to
will be
accommodate.
closed by then. One of the things I do need to know is when does any music need to be? Do you have, guidelines as to when music needs to stop, live music, there, in the theater?
Commercial.
Is there
You're in
a...
a commercial area,
10 o'clock.
so
I believe it's 10 o'clock.
yeah.
Commercial zone. Yeah.
Yes. So
It is-
is there a time? I will follow those guidelines if I know them.
I think the, most places that have a live amusement, dancing, entertainment, is either midnight on Sundays or 1 o'clock during the week, but
I would be earlier than that.
you're not
Yeah.
really, it sounds to me like it's more like a sort of a school that you're talking about here as opposed to...
It is, but not
Also gonna
necessarily.
put on productions.
Exactly. Because, see, one of my goals really in the theater that I do, most of my music is already pre-recorded.
I see, so it's not live music.
Right. But I want live musicians. There are a lot of talented young people out there, and with guidance of adults that can help them to take their musical skills to be able to do it to a live production. I mean, I've been in productions and have gone to productions where there's just 3 musicians, and you'd think it was a whole orchestra, and it's just amazing, the sound.
Mrs. Ekstrom?
Thank you. Madam Chair, this isn't a strip commercial. Most places that get the entertainment license are usually bars or lounges or restaurants or whatever that usually go at least till midnight, some later. And I think, we can, seeing it was advertised as a hearing, I'm sure when you open it up to the audience, if anyone had any concerns, but I would think that this would be bringing such a fresh breath into the town in the aspect of a cultural angle that I think is very much needed. It's desired by, you talk to people all the time and they're talking about things like this. And I think that, to midnight, if you're doing a play or the Christmas Carol or something like that, you're doing
Which
something
I've
like
done.
that. Yeah, you finish it up by 11 o'clock. By
Right.
people are maybe even 10:30 something, but people are mulling around and then leave. So I don't think that I can't imagine that you'd have like rock bands until midnight.
No.
It just doesn't seem like that's what you'd be looking at. So.
Right. But I do want musicians to be able to come in. I think
Absolutely.
it's important because not everybody can act. And so, and I've just seen over the many years that I've been doing this, the confidence that it brings in these young people. I've had several parents come up to me and state that, because of them being in your shows and in your productions, the level of confidence has gone up there. So musicians, they may not be able to act, but if they can get up there and play their music and they get that same type of reaction, they learn too through that,
And this is, I was saying, this isn't like an open amphitheater or something. I mean, this is
Oh, no,
it's
it's
a building.
enclosed.
It's,
Mhm.
So, it's enclosed.
Right.
I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. Thank you.
Did you want to say anything else, Mrs. Winslow?
Oh, I think it's a great idea too, and I think it does fill a void. There's lots of dance, gymnastics, things like that, but there are kids out there that really enjoy performing.
Right, they really do, and they shine with it. And when I was looking for a place to do this, believe me, I've been looking for a while now, I thought that particular strip would be perfect. One, yes, it'll be exposure for me so people know that we were there, but I am looking in this area. I did want to bring it to this area. So this is where I had been looking, and the property that I found worked out perfectly.
And
Madam Chair?
I would say for those that don't know, if this is in the Cranberry Commons, is that
That's
what
correct.
which is the
Yes.
place that people may remember had a fire a couple years ago, and
Last spring.
we have been working to bring it back to life, and I think that this would be
Well, I hope so,
Wonderful.
because not only do I want to start with this, just to let you know, that whole area, where the theater is, can be developed into some wonderful, performing arts, but studios. I have one of the people that is helping me do this. He's a gaffer in the movie industry, and he wants to bring things of that nature. So, I'm really hoping to expose this area to people that have that type of clout to be able to bring things to Wareham.
Very good. Mr. Andrews, did you want to say something in the hearing?
Madam Chair, just for the edification of the listening audience and those at home, this is a byproduct, and pardon the play on words, this has been in the works for some time. This is at Cranberry Commons. We had a massive fire there last spring. We formed a task force. That task force worked very hard, as you know, with Mr. Ferry, Peter Ferry and his family, to get this building up to speed. I want to thank you and your production team.
Thank you.
And I also want to thank Miles Burke, our Director of Inspectional Services, Mr. John Charbonneau, our Town Planner, Dave Pichette, our Conservation Agent, and the entire team, including, he's not here tonight, but Steve Holmes, who have worked very hard with Mr. Ferry to figure it out. How do you make
Right.
that corner work? And I think the important part is that now we have this exciting new development that will bring disposable dollars to Cranberry
Yes.
Highway, and also bring people who love the arts and want to work and study in that field.
Right, exactly.
So it's
Right.
another dimension of, I think, working hard through this body to get the job done. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Right.
Welcome. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor or against this application?
I've got a few questions. I'm a direct abutter. My name is Philip A. Lanza. I'm a direct
Excuse me,
abutter to
would
this
would you
Cranberry-
speak into the microphone, sir, so that people can...
Would you
like
to come here? Yes, please, thank you. So people at home can hear what you're saying, and so we can consider carefully your concerns.
Directly abutting this Cranberry Commons. A few years ago, there was a place at the end of this building, Tony's Pool Hall. Now, she's to be commended on what she's trying to propose here. I like that. Now, we're concerned with increased traffic and loud noises, young people racing up and down. They use the backside of the building as access. I'm not sure whether your place is in the front or in the rear. Okay, so increased traffic and noise is my major concern.
And where exactly are you located? I'm sorry.
I'm at number 727th Street, which is directly off Main Ave. My property
Just
is,
on the other side of
is
the tracks?
adjacent to the railroad right
Railroad
away.
tracks. And you were notified of the hearing?
Yes. The fact that she's on the front of the building, that satisfies some of my concerns, okay? But when you start talking about musicians and performers, we know what that can lead to. Rock and roll bands, young people speeding up and down the road. And it's been very quiet there lately since the pool hall went away. And terrible thing of the fire, but it helped eliminate a lot of noise on our end of town. you're on the other side, and what you propose, as I say, is a beautiful thing for young people, but when you start getting into the rock and roll part of it, all of a sudden, now we've got this influx of young people and increased traffic, and I got to listen to that all night long. You're talking 12 o'clock at night. We're sleeping.
So just for clarification, Mr. Lanza, you were able to hear the noise from the pool hall from your house?
Not so much the noise from the pool hall, but the traffic
But the
that-
traffic in the back of the building?
back and forth.
I understand. Well, thank you for coming in tonight and expressing your concern. I appreciate that. It's better to hear the concerns before than the complaints afterwards, so appreciate you for taking the time. Would you like to address Mr. Lanza's
The
concerns?
children will, or this car, excuse me, will not be behind there. I will not. I mean, if that's going to be the case, they will not be behind there.
They come and
We
go
are
from
in
the
the
front.
front.
I have
Do you know
No
where
complaints.
Could you speak into the microphone,
I'm
Ms.
sorry.
Rogers? I'm sorry. I
Well,
know
I was
you have your-
addressing him,
it's a
I
little awkward.
apologize.
People at
Do you know
home
where
would
the
like to hear.
mural is?
mural is, yes. definitely.
That's me.
Okay.
I'm right underneath there. All the parking will be there.
There's a lot of space between you and me. I should know where it is.
Yes, there is.
All right. Very good. I'm glad that we're able to resolve that. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in favor or against the applicant? If not, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to close the hearing.
Second.
All in favor? The
Aye.
hearing is closed. And what is the pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the application from Janice M. Rogers, doing business as Buzzards Play Productions, for a public amusement on weekdays license for live entertainment and dancing under the provisions of Chapter 140 of the Massachusetts General Laws. They have to be done in two motions, right?
Yes,
Second.
please. And I would just like to say that I go back to the days of the Gateway Players. I hate to admit that I'm old enough to remember that group, but it was quite an active group in the community at one point in time, and they did a lot of productions, and it was a great thing for young people, and I think that to have an outlet like this will be
Thank you. I hope so.
good for the community.
I hope so. That's my intent. Please
All in
know that
favor?
that's my intent.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, it's unanimous.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the application from Janice M. Rogers, doing business as Buzzards Play Productions, for the public entertainment on Sundays license for live entertainment and dancing under the provisions of Chapter 136 of the Massachusetts General Laws.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, it's unanimous. Thank you very much, and good luck.
Thank
Please,
you.
Thank you, Janice.
And how old's your daughter? No.
She's 5.
We'll
She's
be
quite
talk-
she's quite an actress.
We'll talk. They all are at that age.
Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
very much.
Good luck.
Good job.
And please let us know if there are any issues at all. I'd like to jump on the agenda to Superintendent Farr from the Upper Cape Cod Vocational Technical School. He has his 2012 budget presentation for us this evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Mr. Andrews for inviting us here tonight. I also like to recognize one of your elected officials representing Wareham to the Upper Cape Cod Regional Technical School District Committee, Mr. Robert Fichtenmeyer, our vice chairman, right here. Thanks, Bob. And just a little bit of information regarding Mr. White, Connor White, our student from Plumbing and Heating. In addition to being honored by you tonight and by statewide in a banquet in Worcester on the 14th of April, where he'll be recognized amongst about 50 other vocational technical students from around the Commonwealth. He has also, most recently on March 11th, won a gold medal at the Regional Skills USA competition in plumbing and heating. And I'm also happy to say that one of our juniors won the silver medal. Mr. White and the other young man will be representing Upper Cape Tech at the Skills USA state competition. And as we go through the budget, Mr. Dutch, our principal, will give a little bit more information about that. So without further ado, and if it's better for the audience, probably for me to sit than stand, because then you can see the screen.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me just one second. Ladies and gentlemen in the hall, there are plenty of seats inside if you'd like to come in and sit down. Otherwise, I'd ask the gentleman standing by the door to close the door, please. Thank you.
Okay, our 9-member district committee representing Bourne, Falmouth, Marion, Sandwich, and Wareham Mr. Kent Pierce, the other member from Wareham, was unable to attend this evening and sends his regrets. Our leadership team, myself, Mr. Dutch, Mr. Forget, our Director of Curriculum Instruction, who also handles all day-to-day discipline within our facility, Director of Information Media Services, our Director of Student Services, Tony Link, who is our Special Ed Director, our Director of our Licensed Practical Nurse Program and Health Careers at the high school level, Mrs. Patricia Gales, and our 2 technical team supervisors who oversee our 13 technical areas, Mr. Tom Sylvia and Mr. James McHugh. That list, a short time ago, 2 years ago, would have had 2 additional names to it, but we, through budget cuts that we made in '09, were able to, through attrition and through a layoff, we were able to bring that down to the level that you see today. This is some of the best news that we've had in a long time, and I don't know if you can make it out from the back of the room, but Upper Cape Tech was recognized by the Cape Cod Times as having the highest graduation rate of any high school on Cape Cod. And what I present to you today shows you the other 5 towns, and I use Old Rochester because obviously Marion doesn't have a high school. The students can either come to us or to Old Rochester. So I put them up there so you can see, and I commend the town of Wareham also for such a large increase in 1 year as well. So good for
Great,
them as well.
thank you. Could I ask someone to hit one of the bank's lights back there so we can see the slides a little bit better? Perhaps people at home will be able to see them. Maybe the other one. That's perfect. Thank you, thank you.
Mr. Dutch, would you like to talk about MCAS?
We present these slides regarding MCAS just to give you some perspective on the quality of performance of our students based on the dollars that you provide us and how resourceful we are with those dollars. If you recognize that the goal of every school is to have all of their students proficient or advanced, you can see the improvement that we've made in English Language Arts over a 4-year span from a 64% advanced and proficient in 2007 up to 82% proficient and advanced in 2009, a steady improvement. When you look at math, the numbers are even more impressive. We started with a 61% proficient in 2007, and we moved to 84% proficient or advanced in 2010. Biology is a little bit different. Here, students only need to be needs improvement or better. So you can see that in 2008, the first year of testing, 11% of our students failed, and by 2010, only 1% of our 9th grade students failed the biology exam.
I will tell you that the data that's on this sheet has recently been updated as the fiscal year 10 has finally been certified by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And what we're looking at is actual net school spending numbers, the minimum that the state says that we need to spend on the number of students that we have in our school districts. I've highlighted Wareham and Upper Cape Tech in blue to show you that in 2010, over here all the way on the right, the Wareham Public Schools spent a small amount over net school spending, about $984,000, which was about 3.3% of their budget. In that time span, Upper Cape Tech spent 1.7% above net school spending, or $177,725 above. You can see some of our other sending districts really financially continue to go above and beyond, if you will, in supporting the students and the programs in their schools. Old Rochester at 37% above net school spending. Sandwich at 17.5%. Falmouth at 30.3%. And Bourne at 8.6% above net school spending. Although the budget that you will see tonight will show an increase above net school spending, we feel it is in line with the fact that we are growing in numbers as far as students goes, and also in trying to provide the correct number of faculty based on the guidelines set forth in our career and technical programming. The budget that you're going to see shortly has been approved unanimously by our 9-member school committee at the March 10th hearing, and the assessment was then forwarded immediately within a day or two to Town Administrator Mr. Andrews, whereupon he and I did meet at Upper Cape Tech on March the 17th to discuss line by line the budget that you'll see tonight. Basically, this is a graphical representation that if you look at the green and the purple, you can see the green would be the required net school spending that the state says we must spend as a minimum based on the number of students that we have, and also the actual, which is what schools may actually spend. And at 1.7%, you can see it's hard to see the purple be above the green in that first Upper Cape Tech slide. And then we see Bourne, Falmouth, Sandwich, Wareham slightly above, and obviously Old Rochester quite a bit above. As we look at our line items as they increase, I'll be happy to stop at any line item to answer any question that the board may have. Our school committee line item, we're increasing that line item due to some professional development that must take place. All school committee members need to be informed, and they need to be well educated in order to be good caretakers of the budget and of all the things that they need to know. The superintendent's office, my line item, increased slightly due to some contractuals. I do have my administrative assistant within that line item. The board should know that I took a 0% personally the last 2 years, and will take a 0 this year going forward as well. Business and finance, those are the folks in my office that help us run the business part. When we talk about contractual agreements, our teachers and our staff did receive a 2% raise that was negotiated and bargained. Principal and instructional leads would be Mr. Dutch and those administrators that he needs to help run our 692 student facility, the largest number of students in the history of Upper Cape Tech. One of the things we're trying to do this year was to bring back, we laid off approximately 6 teachers in 2009, and we're looking to bring back 3 in technical areas, 1 in environmental science and technology, 1 in information technology, and another 1 in marine services technology. And most of that revolves around student-teacher ratio and the guidelines of Chapter 74, which is the state law which governs vocational technical education. Professional development is basically contractual obligations for course reimbursement and for other workshops as we continue to develop our faculty into one of the best technical schools in the Commonwealth. Our textbook program, we level funded. Our supply line item, which is not just paper and pencil, but which is stethoscopes and tongue depressors and lumber and wire and copper tubing, and anything that you can think of to learn the technical area in order to be able to graduate from high school and earn a living wage or go on to a 2 and 4 year school, or as I always say at the end of my presentation, many of our students, in addition to doing those things, go on to proudly serve our country as well. Instructional technology, which is in some school systems, town school systems, that may be the computers that may get purchased maybe through a capital account on the town side. I'm not sure how that's done. But in a regional school system, everything to run the school system is in this budget. And this instructional technology is everything we need to run the computer system at Upper Cape Tech on a yearly basis. Student services is our special education and guidance counselors and so forth that we need to take care of our students. And all the supplies, materials, secretaries, and their contractual obligations are all contained within those line items. Psychological services, we've increased that line item. It says change in staff. Our special ed director will be retiring after 25 years, and we will be searching for a new special ed director. We'll be putting out that job posting probably before the end of the week. And we want to find someone who has the designation of a school psychologist. But if we cannot, we still need those services, and we may have to go out and contract those services. And this line item would enable us to be able to fund those contractual psychological services for our students. Health services is our school nurse, our part-time, very part-time school doctor, and obviously all the materials and supplies that she needs to run a comprehensive school health office. Our athletic program, I'm going to let our principal talk a little bit about something he's been working on.
You can see that that line item had gone up significantly this year, and that's primarily due to the addition of football. In the past, we have had a cooperative football program with Bourne High School, and last June, we were told that we would no longer be able to participate in a cooperative program with Bourne. So with that, we established our own JV program this past year, and our hope is that this year we'll be fielding a varsity program along with the JV program, and that's where you're seeing the significant additional cost in that line item. As you look at the student body activities, you see that it has gone up there from $57,000 to $73,000, and you see Skills USA as the basis for that. In the past, Skills USA was funded through some private donations that, as the economy has suffered, have gone away. And it's become the school committee's responsibility to take care of this co-curricular activity, and that's why you see that in the budget at this point in time as well. And I would say, you know, as we prepare, our plumbers, our electricians, carpenters, and whatnot, it's a valuable program. It's not one that we would want to see go by the wayside because of funding. This year we have 29 students who placed and received medals, and will be going on to the state competition, which is an all-time high for the school as well. So the investment has certainly paid off.
Thank you, Mr. Dutch. Our school security line item, contained in there is all the materials and equipment to maintain our comprehensive school camera system, our video system, which protects the infrastructure and the students and the visitors as well. And we also have one individual in there who is a designated school safety and security specialist. We don't have a school resource officer in our school, and we don't see a need for one. Our custodial line item is our evening custodial crew, and all the materials and equipment and supplies that's necessary to maintain our 140,000 square foot main facility, plus the several outbuildings that we have on our 75-acre campus. Our heating and utility subtotal, we've increased that line item. We are natural gas heated, and of course electricity being what it is, and in there also would be our telephone service as well. Just trying to give I guess you would say, an educated guess as to where our heating costs are going to be next year. Our ground subtotal we've reduced slightly. We're getting a little bit more help from our horticulture program, and it's a hands-on learning activity for our students so that we can ratchet back some of what it costs to maintain the grounds in order to continue to take care of the real estate, if you will, which is a part of all 5 sending communities based on our regional agreement that was signed in 1964. Maintenance of buildings, if you come to our 40-plus year facility, you will see we have taken excellent care of that facility. There is no danger of us looking to replace it in any time soon. We're taking excellent care of it. The roof is about 13 years old. The heating system is about 7 years old. And because of your generosity and our ability to have some foresight as to what needs to be done at Upper Cape Tech. We are working with MSBA, Mass School Building Authority, through their green repair program in a cost share with the towns to try to replace each and every of the single pane, aluminum framed 1969 circa windows in the school, which should have significant savings of energy moving forward. And since the MSBA came out with this green repair program. We thought it was a time that we could take advantage of the cost share with the towns. It's about a 57% for the towns and 43% to the state. Maintenance of equipment, and we level funded that. All of our vehicles and other equipment that we have in our facility that must be taken care of, repaired, replaced, etc., has to come out of that line item. Employee benefits has not increased a great deal, and that's the good news. We are part of the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group, and that program has been managed, and I guess in this day and age it sounds good if a health group can say that their rates only went up 7 or 8%, even though salaries don't go up to that level. And we had actually less of an increase because we had several faculty members who were on our insurance as retirees that unfortunately are no longer with us and are no longer part of the system. So that's where that came from. Our other insurance program, slight increase, would be our building insurance, our day-to-day building insurance, our automotive insurance for our vehicles, liability insurance, student insurance, etc. And you can see the difference in the total foundation budget is an increase of about $460,000. On the revenue side, which is a number that we got from Governor Patrick's House 1 budget, the Chapter 70, we've anticipated a $2,848,175 in Chapter 70. Our interest revenue we can anticipate as going down based upon the interest rates that are available. Our deferred tuition revenue is level and will be going away within the next year or two. Our anticipated municipal Medicaid, as I'm sure the town administrator can vouch for, Medicaid reimbursement continues to go down, and our controller and Mr. Dutch and myself have recommended a decrease to $15,000. Our excess and deficiency account, which is basically a regional schools version of a rainy day account, by law we're able to keep up to 5% of our budget in that particular account. And this year when it was certified, we only had $27,000 above the 5%. And by a vote of school committee, they added to that another amount to reduce our E&D so that we could put $160,000 towards this budget against the assessment for the 5 towns and still have enough in our excess and deficiency should there be some unforeseen circumstance that we needed to take care of. Our net foundation budget is now $8,360,362. Now, in addition to that, through the regional agreement, the towns have always agreed to transport the students. Also, the state, way back when we formed regional schools, the towns made a promise to 100% fund regional transportation. And it hasn't been that way for quite a while. So first of all, provided by the district, $184,408. We run 2 bus routes that we own the buses, we hire the drivers from Upper Cape Tech. They are the routes that are closest to the school. And we use those buses after school for activities and for athletics. We also contract 10 additional routes through First Student, and that's the $548,600. 6 of those routes will come up for rebidding this time next year. I'm happy to report that I did not put in a fuel adjustment clause in the last contract, so when the gas and the diesel goes up, if your First Student eats that, it doesn't come back on Upper Cape Tech. And so we have some, control, if you will, over that number. So even though our total transportation number has gone down in FY12, in like kind, on the cherry sheet, the state has said that they only anticipate giving us $373,939 in transportation assistance. It's approximately 52% of what the actual is. Okay? Another good story is our licensed practical nursing program, serving post-high school adults from throughout southeastern Mass and the Cape. That program actually turned back this year over $4,000 to the district to be able to place that against the budget. So that reduces the combined net transportation and LPN programs to $354,400. Currently, we have 30 LPNs being trained at Upper Cape Tech and 30 being trained at a satellite facility at some space we rent at Cape Cod Tech in Harwich, but it runs under the Upper Cape Tech banner in our license, and it obviously is helping us be fiscally responsible as we return money to the district. Our capital budget is many of those kinds of equipment that you would perceive in a technical school that needs to be up to date and have the most up-to-date safety mechanisms for the safety of our students and our faculty. And every year we try to enhance some of our 40-year-old facility to bring it up to standard. And that's what that $120,000 in the capital budget is designed to do. Our bond principal and bond interest, there's 3 years remaining on that, and that is for the HVAC system, which we put together with your help back in 02 through 04, somewhere in that particular area. So the total capital budget is just a slight increase of about $2,000 from a year ago. These are the costs unique to a regional school budget, in that in some school systems they're able to kind of work some of this stuff on the town side of the school budget. I'm not sure how it works in Wareham, but in some of my other towns it does. But we have about 18.94% less for services to students from the whole foundation budget. And like I tell people, we're like a mini municipality up on the hill in Bourne, and we serve students from 5 sending communities. And we have to be able to rationalize all of this every year to five town meetings. By reducing our excess and deficiency and putting $160,000 against the budget, you can see, based on the operating percentage to each town, that's a net savings to the town of Wareham, disposable to you, of $52,254, and that you can see how it all spreads out to the other 4 communities as well. The way we figure out our operating percentages is done by our regional agreement, and every year it changes because the total number of students from each of our towns changes, and our total number of students changes. We're right now at 692 students as of October 1st, and Wareham had 226 of those. So that was a 0.32659% of our student body is Wareham students. Enrollment for the capital budget, the way they figure that is we get a number from your school department of grades 1 through 12. And we add those up across the district, and we came up with 11,789 students in grades 1 through 12 from the 5 sending communities. And based on each individual community's number, we're able to get a percentage for the capital portion of the budget. So you can see Wareham's share of the capital is only 0.23174, and those communities who have a larger student body that grades 1 through 12, they pay a greater percentage of the capital. These are the assessments for the 5 towns that have been approved at our recent March 10th school committee meeting. You can see Falmouth, who went up 10 students this year. Falmouth is $2,978,896, and Wareham's operating share is $2,276,250. The capital share $98,923, and a total of $2,375,173 for the town of Wareham. The minimum contribution. A lot of folks don't understand what this is. This is a number which is given to us when the governor gives us his budget, and this is based on the formula where they look at aggregated wealth in the town, municipal revenue growth factor. They take all these factors, and every year it's a new number for each town, and it's also based on the number of students from that town. Okay? So what we've done is we have to take that number to start with when we build our budget. So for your town, it was $1,948,144. The remainder of the net is that amount over net school spending for the town of Wareham for FY12, and that number is $212,362. The transportation is that which is because the state does not give us 100% transportation, so we have to pass that portion along to the towns. And that gives us the operating assessment of $2,276,250. And to that, we add the capital figure of $98,923 for a total FY12 assessment of $2,375,173. Questions?
Does the board have any questions for Mr. Farr?
Mr. Farr, I just have one question.
Is it Dr. Farr? I'm sorry.
Dr.
No,
Farr?
it's not Dr. Farr.
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't
I've
think
been there
so,
for
but
32 years.
I just wanted to make sure I wasn't.
Been there for 32 years, and it's not Dr. Farr.
I figured it out twice, so I'm pretty confident that I have my number right. The cost per student, based on the 226 student number, is $10,509.62. Do you know how that compares to what Wareham and the other towns are spending per student?
Knew you'd ask that. If I look at dollars per foundation enrollment, FY11, which is the current year that we're in, I'm looking at Department of Elementary and Secondary Education documents. Dollars per foundation enrollment, which is the foundation budget plus Chapter 70, which is the actual net school spending. Okay, that's the minimum that we must spend on each kid. Wareham's is $10,135. Mine is $15,690. But because of Chapter 70, Wareham students actually gain the benefit of more Chapter 70. And that's why the town of Wareham, out of pocket, does not have to pay. If you do the math for the 200 students from Falmouth at $2.9 million, you can see a big discrepancy where most of those other towns are paying around $14,000 per student as opposed to the $10,000 per student.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Mrs. Ekstrom?
Just for clarification, that is the amount that the state requires us to spend. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, but only because I was going to say, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that Wareham spends, I thought it was like 11.3. That was the average on the DESE website. So I just wanted to make sure that that's the minimum that we're required to spend, not how much we actually spend. Thank you.
That's the minimum, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Andrews?
Madam Chair, just so that you know, in working with Kevin and his leadership team, we scoured every line, as we have been doing with our town budget, school budget, and his team clearly identified areas that we're all facing significant increases in with respect to utilities, with respect to collective bargaining agreements, and capital outlay. And that's why I support his school district's recommendation and have loaded it in the budget. Obviously, it's the board's decision to make, but I believe that Mr. Farr and his leadership team have worked through each of the lines from healthcare to a number of the programs that they have to make certain that the dollars that are in the budget are required. And I have to say, I love the dropout rate. What was that, 0.6%?
0.6, right.
So I think that speaks for itself in my mind's eye. So I support and recommend Superintendent Farr's budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. I'd just like to say that I know a number of students who've attended and graduated from the Upper Cape School, and the quality of education can't be beat. I wish we had more slots available to our students. I think Wareham is very fortunate to be able to use as many slots as I know there was at one time. There was a waiting list for our kids who wanted to come to your school.
Well, if I can address that, Madam Chair, your students are doing very well and that's a testimony to your school system preparing them, because we have 400 applications every year for 180 seats in the freshman class based on the physical plant that we currently have. And they're all on a level playing field with all 5 towns. And it's all based on grades, behavior, attendance, and a personal interview, and a guidance counselor recommendation. And so within the next couple of weeks, Mr. Dutch, isn't that right? The admissions team will be getting together, and students will be anxiously waiting for those big white envelopes with the big blue yes on them, hopefully to come to a mailbox near them in one of the villages in Wareham.
So what you're telling me, in effect, is that we still have a large number of students who aren't able to attend, that there's no room
And that's
for,
district-wide.
which is a shame, right?
That's district-wide, and that's one of the pieces of being fiscally responsible, is if times were better, I might be looking to the Mass School Building Authority to put an addition on, to increase programming, and to try to replicate some of the success that we have with the Connor Whites and the other students that we've had in our school. I hope, maybe not in my tenure, but maybe in the tenure of Mr. Dutch and the leadership team that I leave behind, at some point that it will come to that.
Thank you. And Mr. Andrews, you have been able to squeeze out the dollars that we needed to support this budget, correct?
That is correct, Madam Chair, and I support the recommended budget as I've built it into the town administrator's budget.
Does anyone else have any comments?
Now, when do we get the signs, Kevin? Are they coming soon? There's the signs that we...
As soon as you get me the
Okay, all right, I'm just kidding. There's great equipment that we want to use to promote some of the active programs, Madam Chair, that we want to participate in, and as soon as we get you the graphics, I'd like to get those up this spring if we can.
And as anything else comes up throughout the year that you find that you need
Thank you.
some assistance with, please don't hesitate, and
Thank you,
we'll
Bob.
try to accommodate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate your time, and I'm sure that if the Finance Committee has any questions for you, they will address them to us tomorrow, and we will get back to you with them from the town administrator. And I thank those members of the Finance Committee who were able to attend here this evening. So
I want to thank Mr. Andrews. It's a pleasure working with him. It's a joy working with Mr.
I'd also like to thank Mr. Pierce and Mr. Frichtenmeyer, because they are representing our town. I think that we need to stay a little bit more plugged into the loop with them a little earlier on, so that we can maybe have a little bit of discourse earlier on about what changes you may, in fact, be coming up with. And I think we have done that in the past on a number of occasions, but I think this year we didn't really get there, so maybe next year.
I
we
think
can
with this
get on
relationship,
the
I
list.
think you're going to see more of us,
More communication, great.
and hopefully some more of Connor Whites in the world.
That's right. And thank you, Bob and Kent.
Thank you.
Let's move to the town administrator's report, leadership team.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to the listening audience. I'd like to start off with an update from John Foster, our treasurer-collector, who has secured a series of financial documents that we need to take some action on. John, can you come up, please?
I'm sorry. And after that, if we could go back to the road permit so that the people from the Church of the Good Shepherd could go home. I apologize.
That's fine, Madam Chair. John, if you can give us an update, John, and also suggest the recommended actions for the board, please.
Good evening.
Good evening, John. Thank you for coming in this evening.
We actually, I'm here this evening to go over two different borrowings that are about to take place with your votes. The first vote that needs to be taken this evening is for the sale of $1.25 million worth of bands. They will come due this July 15th, so they're a short-term borrowing bond anticipation note. It's for the capital projects that were voted this past October-November town meeting, and they include police communication equipment, software and hardware for both the police department and the town hall, as well as $500,000 worth of machinery. There is a vote, which I believe you all have in front of you, it might be in your packet, that needs to be taken. The lowest bidder, these bonds went out to bid. The other bonds that we will be voting on this evening are a bond from the Mass Water Pollution Abatement Trust, but these actually went out on the market. The interest rate for the lowest bidder was 0.7%. It's a short-term note, so we received very good interest rates. Actually, the range, there were 4 bids. The range was substantial. But Century Bank was the low bid at 0.7% interest. And I believe it's just approximately, it's actually $2,527.78 that will be due on that bond anticipation note.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Does anybody have any question for Mr. Foster? I think we have the motion paperwork in our... You have it, Mr. Andrews?
I looked through the packet. I didn't see it.
It's the ones I handed you earlier.
I don't see the one for the 1.2 million.
I have a copy. You can take this one.
Thank you, Mr. Foster.
Well, you can leave that there, so I don't have to. Thank you.
I'm sure you shopped around and got us the best deal, right?
Actually, it was a very good deal. It's less than 1% interest, so...
Great. You all.
Well, the first 2 bidders were banks, and the second 2 were investment firms, so...
Madam Chair. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Foster.
I'm all set.
Okay.
You need to notarize it, right, Mary Ann?
I need to witness the vote.
I make a motion to approve the sale of $1,250,000 at 0.70% general obligation bond anticipation note of the town dated April 1st, 2011, and payable July 15th, 2011 to Century Bank at par and accrued interest, if any. Do I read the whole page, Mr. Foster?
No, I think that's sufficient.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous. Okay, now do the $200,000 one.
The second vote necessary is for the Mass Water Pollution Abatement Trust Community Septic Management Loan Program, $200,000 worth of bonds. They will be loaned out by CETA on an interim loan basis, and they will be locked in when they have expended the $200,000 worth of bonds or notes. That is the 6th in a series for the Community Septic Management Loan Program.
Madam Chair. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to ask if anyone had any questions on that.
That's also a 0% interest loan.
I make a motion that we approve a bond or bonds in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $200,000 pursuant to Chapters 29C and 111 of the General Laws, in a vote of the town passed October 25th, 2010, Article 8, which authorized a total borrowing of $200,000 for a community septic management loan program.
Is there a second?
Oh, no.
All 6 of what?
It's the same list as the last one.
Okay, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
much the same thing that we agree to pay it.
As written?
As I can amend it to say as written.
It's very long.
Because right now we only voted on the first one,
All right,
and
then
there's 6 of them, so...
you should ask for all 6 of them then. Mrs. White.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Do you want to go back to the other one? Because there's more on the other one, too.
Mr. Foster, what do you recommend?
I would recommend that you at least vote it as written, because there are 6 different
6 different
votes.
bonds,
Right.
6 different notes, correct, okay? And I
Okay.
think as written would suffice.
Okay. So, Madam Chair, may I amend my motion to reflect the addition of the words "as written"?
Yes, you may.
On the second one? Yep.
All in
I'll-
favor?
Aye.
Okay, as amended.
And then if we
And
could ask for
we'll go
reconsideration
back
on the first one,
For
too.
reconsideration on the first one?
Madam Chair, I make a motion for reconsideration on the approval of the sale of $1,250,000 worth of bonds.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? And the new motion, please.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the sale of a $1,250,000 bond, 0.70% general obligation bond anticipation note of the town dated April 1st, 2011, and payable July 15th, 2011, to Century Bank at par and accrued interest, if any, as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Sorry about that, Mr. Foster.
Unanimous. That's okay, we're missing our real clerk tonight, so appreciate your efforts.
I try.
And is there anything else that you need from the board this evening, Mr. Foster?
Madam
Do you
Chair.
need us to swear?
What, do you have it to sign?
We do.
Oh, is this the one to sign?
No, that's
No.
that packet
Okay.
that's approximately an inch thick. That's one bond, and the smaller packet is the...
Would you like us to sign it now, Mary Ann, before
I
we?
have to witness it, so.
Okay, so let's start signing.
And John, if it, through you, Madam Chair, if you could update the debt schedule so we can get that to the Board of Selectmen as well as to the Finance Committee as we
Absolutely.
discussed. Thank you.
Those bonds that we voted this evening for $1,250,000, they'll actually be permanently financed, hopefully in July, when the projects are complete, or when we know an accurate number. And at that time, they will go out to bid again for a permanent loan. And I believe the term on that, on the capital improvements on those items is 5 years.
Very good.
To go through.
So you can say, we really are signing the right documents.
I suppose for all we know, we could be signing our lives away here, right?
Definitely. Yes.
I can tell you by signing those, that one packet in front of your chairman, your signature on that piece of documentation will set in place a wire transfer of $1.25 million. So your signatures on that note will send that money to us this Friday.
That's cool.
Exactly, with interest.
With interest. What?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
there's a
the-
ton on there,
the,
too.
That's what a Pollution Abatement Trust. Yeah, it's the same type of,
Does she have it?
I think so. It's multiple copies of each one, that's what it takes.
She's signing it. Jane, you have the second packet there?
It's on the bottom of that one.
A lot of duplicates.
Madam Clerk, it's a pleasure to have you around, just so you know.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate that. That's not my signature. Very distinct. You're gonna take those over to me in the morning, or do you want me to take them?
Now they can come back in the box, and we'll just pick them up in
Okay.
overnight mail.
No, John said that I can do it in the morning. I'll do what I have to do in the morning.
Oh, Jane, you missed one on this one. Madam Chair, the very last page. Sorry. Yeah. Second to last tab, Madam Chair. Okay. And then there's one weird one right here. There you go. Oh, my pleasure. Mr. Voster, do you need this?
No, all set.
Do you want that one?
While we're finishing the signing of the documents, maybe we could just jump back to our good friends from the Church of the Good Shepherd. I apologize for making you wait. Are you still here?
I just have to give you the oath, just.
Oh, you have to give us the oath,
Yes.
okay. I don't think they're here.
As soon as she's. You can catch the signature on the way back, Jim.
That's it, thanks.
Okay. I just need you to raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that this is your signature and that you freely and willfully sign this document for the purpose contained in it?
I do.
I do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, ladies and
Thank you, John.
gentlemen, for your
Thank you.
patience. why Steve and Walter weren't here tonight, because they didn't want to have to sign their name 500 times. Just kidding. Okay, we have a road permit for the Church of the Good Shepherd, Project Bread. Is there anybody here representing the Church of the Good Shepherd? I believe they were invited in.
There were, Madam Chair, I believe.
Well, the walk isn't until May 1st. How about if we put this on the agenda next week?
That's good.
Unless you prefer to approve it this evening. It's, is this the first year they've done this Wareham walk?
I thought that they've done it
For
in the
hunger?
past.
I don't recall it, but
I may be thinking of something else. We can put it off and see if maybe they can come next week.
Sure. We can re-notify them, Madam Chair.
it's the second annual. So why don't we ask them if they'd like to come in?
I've made a note, Madam Chair, I have.
Mrs. Ekstrom? Doesn't matter? You're okay with it? Well, then why don't we just vote it and save them the trouble?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the application by the Church of the Good Shepherd Project Bread, care of Reverend Diane Badger, 74 High Street, Wareham, Mass., for the use of town roads for the Wareham Walk for Hunger. The walk starts at the Church of the Good Shepherd, down Sandwich Road to the Church of the Nazarene along Route 28 before turning onto Depot Street, then to Minot Ave to Main Street, then back to the Church of the Good Shepherd. This event will be held on May 1st, 2011 from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m.
It is understood and agreed that the town will be held
Oh,
harmless.
it is understood and agreed that, okay, I'm just going to add to my, can you withdraw your second? It is understood and agreed that the town will be held harmless from all liability as to damage to property or injuries to any persons.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? It's unanimous. Last year's Walk for Hunger raised approximately $2,500 for the mission of Project Bread, so people will be soliciting a donation for the Walk for Hunger. Please be generous. All right. Mr. Andrews, if you'd like to continue with your...
Madam Chair, through you, just wanted to, and just make an adjustment to item B. As we were preparing this information on Friday into Saturday, we had the second annual Wareham Works 2011 Community and Economic Summit from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. At our own town hall. And this year's summit focused on business-to-business connections. We set up a trades fair atmosphere in the auditorium. It was a bit eclectic, a little different. Some people wanted a little bit more background music and other types of things. We're going to recap and have some planning going forward. I thought the presentations and some of the models presented, some of the speakers were absolutely fantastic, including Joanna DeCuna from the Boys and Girls Club, who presented her thoughts on summer employment. And while we had 16 booths of captive audience, if you will, we are trying to put together a very active summer youth employment program with the Boys and Girls Club. It was, once again, a trades fair atmosphere. At center stage was the Department of Transportation presenting their plans and community input for the Route 6 and Route 28 $15 million transportation improvement program. And so we had representatives from all kinds of state agencies, including the Massachusetts Office of Business Development and a number of the Chamber of Commerce and a number of other groups that were there, including the Southeastern Economic Development Corporation, of which we had a number of presentations. Once again, we're up for any type of input people had. I know Member Ekstrom has worked very hard in hatching this idea, getting that out there, and I think we did our best to get a second annual Wareham Works Conference, Summit in, and I think we can learn from what we've presented and also try to attract more business-to-business connection in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews, and I'd like to thank all the town departments that contributed and were present on Saturday. And I'd also like to comment on the state of the Wareham Town Hall Auditorium, which was just amazing to see it shined and polished and looking the way it used to from stage to balcony. So thank you all for being there, and thank you, Mr. Andrews, for your efforts, and Selectman Ekstrom for yours. We are trying to get some economic development stimulated here in our town, and these summits are definitely a step in the right direction.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to warn Mr. Andrews that my goal is for the 5th annual Wareham Work Weekend.
Weekend?
Wareham Works Weekend.
Is that like a sleepover?
Like a whole event,
Is
the
it?
whole
Okay.
thing.
There's
We
more
got
than
3
one day.
years to get there.
Okay. I'm up for it. I think we've learned from it. We'll go forward, and once again, I welcome any input that folks might have on it. There was a lot of excitement in the room. The restaurants did a great job. Everything from, once again, tremendous food and tremendous response back on that, and it was first come, first served. So thank you, Madam Chair, for indulging me on that. Item C, I'd like to give an update on the budget, even though I do want to keep this matter on, Madam Chair, for our next meeting. I'd like to ask our town accountant, Elizabeth Zaleski, and Mr. Derek Sullivan to come forward. You have before you what I would call an errata sheet. I just want to give you kind of a global perspective. What that basically entails is that there's a lot of territory between the early part of December in preparing a budget and late March. And in my estimation, we have made the corrections and adjustments to the budget, even though we are still using the governor's proposed budget, House 1. I have been in touch with the House Ways and Means Committee, which will be putting out their report very shortly. The chairman of that committee, Brian Dempsey, has been working very hard to think about and to work on municipal aid and school district aid. I know there was a number of school districts up on the Hill today talking with their legislative delegations and talking about what's important to cities and towns going forward. So what we've done here is put together what I call an errata sheet, and we will keep this ongoing. It will be a working document until we file it. At the top of the sheet are the items that we know that are critical to us, which we need to address. Just want to address a couple of them. I'll turn it over to our town accountant. But our snow and ice deficit approaches $439,000 and change. We had a very difficult winter. We had hoped that we'd get some relief from the federal government through for the January 12th snow emergency that was declared by the governor. And Plymouth County is not on that list. You have that certification in front of you. So we need to add that to the mix, if you will, going forward. I also just wanted to point out to you that the overlay per the assessors, the Board of Assessors, is up this year because we need to put additional dollars in that as a number of items have come before the Board of Assessors to cover it. So just getting out of the box, the town is facing $1,174,618 of additional items or additional budget tasks that we have at hand. And so with that being said, I'll turn it over to Elizabeth Zaleski and Derek Sullivan for a brief presentation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair. I'm Elizabeth Zaleski, the town accountant for the town of Wareham.
And I'm Derek Sullivan, the financial analyst for the town of Wareham.
Got to speak into the mic.
I'll repeat myself. I'm Elizabeth Zaleski, the town accountant for the town of Wareham.
And I'm Derek Sullivan, the financial analyst for the town of Wareham.
This evening, we're here to discuss the errata sheet, as Mr. Andrews had previously mentioned. At the top section of your sheet, you'll see the variables that we have right now we're facing with revenues that we don't have available in the budgeting process you would normally have. The debt exclusion that had been voted in the past, which was the payments for the building of the school, middle school, that's now gone. So that's $325,000 less of revenue that we actually have available. The snow and ice deficit, as Mr. Andrews mentioned, is high this year. And in the last few years, the snow and ice deficit has not been raised in the budgeting process. and to be prudent for the town of Wareham, it does need to be raised. So this is revenue that we have to take off of our available funding. Additionally, the overlay has been put into the budgets historically at a level rate of $250,000. The Board of Assessors by vote voted $410,000, which is a variance of $160,000. So these are some of the bigger revenue issues that we're facing during this fiscal year, and we have to abide by the vote of the Board of Assessors for the overlay. Additionally, the next section that we're looking at is the school funding and the in-kind that is reported by DESI for the town of Wareham, or I'm sorry, not the in-kind, but the net school spending inclusive of in-kind is $30,125,218. And part of our in-kind, part of our budgeting process is the in-kind itself. We're estimating low this year at about $6 million. It should be in that range. The town funding with the Chapter 70 funding that we have allocated to the school is $24,397,610, and that's just the net school spending. So the total funding going to the school is $30,397,610. In addition to that funding is non-net school spending. That covers the school transportation budget. That's an additional $1,341,652. The total school funding during this budgeting process is $31,739,262. Additional to that, which isn't included in the per se school budget, is the amount of the Upper Cape vote technical, which was presented to you tonight, at the cost of $2,375,173. So the total amount that we have budgeted for the schools with the Upper Cape and the transportation is $34,114,435, and that is inclusive of the in-kind. Is there any questions on this sheet?
Madam Chair, may I ask a question?
Certainly, please.
Mrs. Zelinski, do you know, I appreciate this sheet. It would just be a lot easier for me if I knew what that meant from the last numbers. Do you know what the FY11 school budget was, not
Sure.
the in-kind or just the...
Sure. The school budget as voted was $26,116,000. During that, and that was inclusive of the transportation budget. During the, because when we did the governor's budget last year, we had a reduction of $822,000. So then we infused back into the school $415,000. The net budget for last year was $25,055,000. I'm doing this off the top of my head, so if I'm not exact, forgive me. Let me just double check. 1 minute.
Madam Chair, while the accountant's checking, this is an iterative process, as we know, and I think Superintendent Farr hit it on the head, that we expect that there'll be some change in the House Ways and Means and Senate Ways and Means budgets as they're developed. And we're carrying right now, once again, the governor's, it says right in the column, the governor's recommended budget on what we've used from the December 15th submission.
Inclusive of the Upper Cape for last year? You don't want the Upper Cape? Okay.
No,
that's fine.
I'm trying to, I'll tell you what I'm trying to figure out.
Yes, ma'am.
When the process started with the December 15th number, we were off
Yes.
between the FY11 budget and the proposed budget by $1 million and change.
Actually, I think it is much more substantial than...
No, I'm not talking about the school committee's
Okay.
proposed budget. I'm talking the difference between today's budget and the proposed for FY12. So I'm trying to figure out where that gap is now.
Oh, the gap, that may be something you want to address to Mr. Andrews, as he's been working very diligently with Dr. Rabinovich on several meetings to close this gap.
I'll say this, and through the chair, because we still have some work to be done, that we have several proposals on the table that have to be completed, but we're not in the $1 million range any longer. We're below $1 million. And I think that shows progress, as we had talked about at budget review, but by the same token, we literally had to, prove out some issues at the table with regards to the school budget is calling for and what is available on the town side. So that starting point was with an additional $415,000 that was provided from last fiscal year, and we're below right now the $1 million mark on work papers that we're once again still proving out.
I believe that you'll find our work papers are in the range of under 500,000.
But
So-
that's a level funded.
It's a workable solution that Mr. Andrews and Dr. Rabinovich have been working on to make sure that everything's covered.
In other words, what I think Ms. Zaleski is trying to say is that the school department there's been some give and take between the school department and the town. And Mr. Andrews isn't quite ready to present that to the board at this point in time, but he was planning to present it to the ad hoc budget committee in the near future and to the finance committee as well, if I understand that correctly.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Zaleski or Mr. Sullivan? On the overlay, I know that we need to accommodate the Board of Assessors, but is that because the revaluation is this year, that they're asking for additional?
No, what typically happens is that your Board of Assessors will vote the overlay, and they will give the advice and counsel as to what they feel so the overlay should be for the coming fiscal year, and it meets the DOR requirements. Historically, this past recap year, we should have had an overlay budgeted at $326,000. We budgeted $250,000. When the recap was completed, the maximum amount that we could put into our overlay was $303,000. So we were still under the requirement by the DOR, which is noted in our letter when we got our recap and our free cash certificate, not the free cash, but the recap, the recapitulation when we set our tax rate. It's one of those letters that you get and it says where your problem areas are, and that's a problem area. The biggest issue with the overlay is what's called poles and wires, where some people in the audience may not know what that means, is when telecommunication companies are in the town, they're utilizing our land to get paid for the services they provide. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts several years ago allowed communities to tax for that, and these communication companies have filed with the appellate tax board for abatements. So that case is still pending in the Supreme Judicial Court. So we still have to say we taxed, but we also have to cover it in the overlay in case it's abated.
Thank you.
You're welcome. There's explanations on the variables on the budgets, if you want to get into those on the next page as far as what happened through December up until today.
So, Madam Chair, this is really an update, of which I will present to the Finance Committee as well, but there's also verbiage as to why some of the changes were made, and the overlay is a perfect example. That has been a case pending before the Department of Revenue, just on poles and wires real quick, for at least 7 to 8 years now.
Correct.
And it's almost like you have to set the money aside in a separate checking account to cover it, if in case we are not accurate in our assessment as approved by the Department of Revenue. And every city and town is faced with this, putting this extra money aside in case, in fact, the decision is not in our favor.
Correct. If the Supreme Court comes back and they rule in favor of the communications companies, the town is still obligated to pay their abatements. So this is to cover the town for any future judicial action for abatements.
Is there anything else that you wanted the board to hear or understand this evening, Mr. Andrews?
Just that there's an update, once again, line by line, by town department, but not by the revenue sources and by town department. Wanted to give this update, and we'll further discuss other items to hopefully close what gap there is on Tuesday night.
Right, I appreciate the fact that you have consideration for the rest of the board members who are not here this evening. I'm sure they'll have the opportunity to review this information and ask their questions, and then we'll have a full vetted discussion next Tuesday evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I can ask the town accountant and Derek to step just for a minute to move to item D. Tomorrow night, we do have a presentation jointly between the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee by James Powers, Principal in Powers and Sullivan, regarding the fiscal 2010 audit report. Mr. Powers will provide the detailed analysis of the report, and we will get that to the board members and to the Finance Committee as soon as we can, as he's putting the finishing touches on it. I spoke with him earlier today, and we'll have that obviously to the board as soon as we can.
And
That's at
just
6 p.m., if I could just say, 6 p.m. Here, and I think the Finance Committee is going to adjourn back downstairs for additional business.
just to clarify, Mr. Andrews, as of 6:45 this evening, before I came over, we still have not received the draft. So as soon as it does arrive, Mr. Andrews will pass it on to those who need it.
Thank you. I just have one other question while you're here. There have been, I've been reviewing the warrant, and I know that a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, you sent out a forecast for the free cash.
Yes, ma'am.
And going through the warrant and the special warrant, it looked as though a number of the items that had originally been placed on the forecast for free cash were resolved by transfers from other accounts in FY11, so that money will now be available in free cash. Am I correct in that?
What we're trying to do in the budgeting process, and when we were getting to the special town meeting, is to take any available funds from any other source, so it had a less of an impact to the free cash. And that was the goal. We had originally anticipated that we would have to take the total amount of $994,000, which was remaining in the free cash. But after analysis, taking money from everywhere we could, we got the amount down to $710,000. There is no other items in the town meeting warrant, the special or the annual, that will impact free cash. That balance that's remaining, which is approximately $260,000, will be used in the calculation for free cash for FY11.
Thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
And the last thing was I had received a question regarding the certification of free cash.
Yes,
My
ma'am.
understanding is that the DOR would like to have an audited statement to certify free cash, but that it's not required, and that you are allowed to submit a balance sheet which is reviewed and certified by DOR in lieu of a completed audit statement. Am I correct on that?
Historically, it's rare for the DOR to request an audited financial statement before free cash is certified. It is not unusual for them to request a draft of your financial statement before your tax rate is set. That's more of the precedent there. But the audit before free cash, no. No. If the town of Wareham had major issues consecutive year to year to year, they would put on a stipulation, and if they did put a stipulation in, when we got our tax rate certification this year, they would have said, stipulated on any future tax rates, your financial statement must be prepared prior to acceptance of the tax rate.
Thank you, Ms. Zaleski. Does
You're
anyone
welcome.
else have any questions?
Thank you very much, Biz and Derek. Appreciate it, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
Madam Chair, on item E, if I could expedite the report, I will be convening Safe Summer 2011 leadership team, including Chief Stanley, Gary Buckminster, Harbor Master Dave Evans from EMS, Bob Ethier, our health agent, and Miles Burke. Right after our leadership team tomorrow, To make preparation and planning for Safe Summer 2011, we'll be discussing various issues including enhanced communications, renovations on the docks, and restroom grant opportunities, and better parking collaboration in terms of how we move forward with our Safe Summer program. If I could move to status report on ongoing items, I believe the Cranberry Commons Task Force dividend that you heard tonight from Janice Rogers investing in the Cranberry Commons complex speaks for itself. That's a product of a meeting that, a series of meetings, if I would say, over the past couple of weeks, where all of the permits necessary for her operations went forward. I have been in further discussions with the Chief of Police with regards to an agreement. I did meet with Barbara Sullivan to ask her to help with regards to the model recreation program. Just to remind the board, this is to basically say that we could have no-cost or low-cost programs consolidated so that our youth around town would have additional recreation opportunities going forward through the summer. The business certificate program is still under review in terms of ensuring compliance. And I want to thank the clerk for her work today to help me out on a matter that was of interest to me. The Land Donation Task Force, I did meet with Dave Pichette. We're working with the bank with respect to their interest in making certain that a potential donor of a donation of property from a donor meets with certain environmental standards that we have to adhere to, and that is underway. I'll keep you posted on that. I have given you an update, obviously, on the governor's proposed budget, which is now before the House Ways and Means Committee, and I have worked very closely with the local legislative delegation to convey our needs as we've gone through this process. The DECA safety issues that, if you recall, that were brought to our attention, I've asked Mark Gifford from Municipal Maintenance to address these, including, as soon as we can, get some of the lower no-cost striping down and crosswalk activity underway as soon as it's a little bit, the weather turns a little bit better for us. So that's my update, my TA report. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Andrews? Thank you.
Can I do one quick shout out, Madam Chair, real quick, to Heather Holmes, who had surgery today? Thank you, Heather.
Well, we wish you the best, Heather.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Next agenda item we have requested for the Board of Health and Clean Water Committee. I apologize to the Clean Water Committee. You are here, and I appreciate you being here, and we will allow you to have a meeting with us, but our intent was really to discuss this with the Board of Health agent and the Board of Health on the, so if they could come forward, we wanted to get an update on the nitrogen regulations process. Thank you. Good evening. As you heard a little earlier this evening, I'm sure you're aware, there's a little bit of buzz in the community about what's going on with the nitrogen net zero bylaw regulations that you all are overseeing the process of. So I thought that we would ask the people who are in charge to come and talk to us about what they hope to see transpire and possibly comment on what is transpiring as well.
Good evening, Madam Chairman. My name is Diane Allen. I'm the Chairman of the Board of Health. The Wareham Board of Health is currently working to develop nitrogen regulation with assistance from the Coalition for Buzzards Bay and citizen volunteers. The Deputy Regional Director from the Department of Environmental Protection attended our last meeting on March 14, 2011, and has stated that he would pledge assistance and resources to develop nitrogen regulations for Wareham, and perhaps, if successful, these could be used as model regulations for Massachusetts. We plan on continuing these efforts and plan to submit regulation to Town Council for review. The last step would be to hold a public hearing on the proposed regulation before the vote by the Wareham Board of Health. The consensus is that although expensive, an offset fee would be necessary to accomplish nitrogen zero. We are not sure that it is legal to charge a fee. The board itself has not been that active in the nitrogen zero regulation. Mr. Ethier, who is our health agent, and a bunch of, not a bunch, but a group of volunteers with the Coalition for Buzzards Bay have formulated a task force, and they are the ones that have been meeting and going over and trying to decide how this is all going to be accomplished. So I think it would be better if we heard from Mr. Ethier and from anyone else who are on the task force.
Mr. Ethier.
Madam Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Town Administrator, Mr. Andrews, thank you for inviting us here this evening. Currently, we're working, as the chairman has said, toward these regulations. It's a difficult task. There's a number of departments involved. Zoning, planning is also going to be involved if this is to work properly. We have been working with the coalition. Mark Rasmussen and Kerry Driscoll, who's the attorney for the Coalition for Buzzards Bay. We owe a debt of gratitude to them. They are at every meeting. They are providing resources. They keep all the minutes. They keep all the information, update our last meeting by virtue of the proposed regulations, update them as the volunteers decide how it should go at each meeting. I think the meetings have been pretty successful so far. As there is in any group, there's a lot of people with different ideas, and we're working toward making these regulations work. I think that it would probably be appropriate as the facilitator of this volunteer group, if Mark from the coalition would say a few words about how you think we're doing so far, if that's okay with the board.
Please come forward.
Good evening. Hi. Just a few comments. We have been trying to, let me start a little bit back. Wareham is trying to do something that no other community in Massachusetts has done. There is no precedent for a nitrogen zero bylaw for new development anywhere else in the state.
Well, it's nice to hear that we're being innovative.
You're very much innovative and very much ahead on this issue. So that's why we wanted to jump right in and offer whatever help we could to the Board of Health to get something drafted. To make some of the not to get too detailed into some of the technical issues, to try to design every new development of all types, from one house to a commercial development to a major subdivision, produces a lot of new nitrogen, from its septic systems, from its lawns, from its roads. The technology exists only to a point to get it very low. To try to then get it to zero usually requires that you are asking the developer to go off-site. Some developers like the 80 Makepeace Company have the ability to do all their offsets and trading within the property because they have lots of uses, cranberry bogs, subdivisions, commercial. When you have different uses, you can do trading, and they've been successful in meeting zero for the River Run development. But when you get it down to a scale where you're talking about a few houses, up to 20 houses, one landowner, doesn't have a lot of uses, to try to figure out how that person gets offsets somewhere else and gets to the number zero is very difficult. It's difficult from a municipal coordination question. The Board of Health isn't used to reviewing subdivisions at that level. They don't review road design and stormwater and lawn construction. So you're bringing into the Board of Health, if you're trying to do it just in Board of Health regs, you're bringing into the Board of Health a lot of complexity about site design that they don't typically do. Stuff that's in the Planning Board and the Zoning Board, as it should be. So we've struggled with how do you make this work just within health regulations if you don't have the other entities involved, the subdivision, for example, being the most dominant one. Second, if the developer can't find the offsets on their own property, they need to go off-site to another site. How do you How does that person do that if there's nobody else willing to give them the offsets? Do you then try to charge a fee in which the town uses the money to get the offsets? We've run into lots of legal concerns that assessing a fee like that is not legal. There's some recent Superior Court cases that suggest that that's not legal to assess a fee. And then lastly, if you're requiring the developer to get their offsets from another property, can you make a landowner subject to the will of another landowner to do something on their property that are constitutional issues? I bring up these examples to suggest from a coordination, legal, technical, there's a lot of challenges. So we're on draft 7. We haven't resolved all of those challenges. We still have a lot of work to do. I want to commend Bob Ethier and the Board of Health for their dedication to this. They've been holding these open sessions. We've been trying to get input from citizens, from people who work for developers, site engineers. All the town boards have been participating, the town board staff, and trying to flush out all the issues. It's a clumsy way to write regulations. I think maybe that's why you're hearing about some dissatisfaction with different aspects of it. But we do move forward each session. We're not ready to present a recommendation yet, but I just can't praise the Board of Health enough. No other Board of Health in the region has tried to tackle this, and it's not easy. I guess that's sort of the background I could give. We're going to continue to stick with it and give whatever assistance we can. The recent offer by the DEP to come in and get their expertise is great. We want to get all the input we can. We definitely at some point will need a lot of legal review of what we're working on. But right now we're in a mode of plugging away at it.
Okay, well, I appreciate your praising the Board of Health. However, I just heard them say that they weren't really all that involved, so I'm a little confused.
I praise them for directing their staff to be working so directly on this. Yeah, that's what I meant.
I see.
We give Mr. Ethier our support. He reports back to us when we have our meetings as to what goes on at those meetings. I more or less say personally, I'm not in the field. I rely on the people on the task force to tell us, what needs to be done.
And I guess that might have been one of the issues that we've heard crop up, is how this task force came about and who was appointed to the task force and how it was, what kind of input you all may have had to that process, if there was any.
I don't think there was really any appointment process, to be honest.
No.
I don't think there was really any appointment process that I recall. We had the Wareham nitrogen presentation, and then the people that were there, the Coalition for Buzzards Bay, et cetera.
Could you speak into the mic, please, Dr. Gleason? Thank you.
Coalition for Buzzards Bay, et cetera, volunteered their services, as did Bob, to be part of that committee. There were several other citizens at that meeting that volunteered, and there was really no appointment process. People volunteered to get together and work together.
Mrs. Ekstrom?
Thank you. Mr. Ethier, how many people that are on that did you reach out to, or did they all come forward to volunteer?
Well, some of them were attending the Board of Health hearings when the presentations were made, and they thought that they'd like to be a part of it. All I did was the very first meeting. I remember talking to you about it, about how do we attract people, how do we appoint people? I mean, how do we go about this? All I did was say, Monday, it's so-and-so, at such and such time I was going to set up, or just be in the cafeteria for anybody that wants to volunteer. And also the coalition who presented this with some of the members from the Clean Water Committee also volunteered their time.
Okay, because I recall the conversation with you. You had given me names of people that you invited that day when we were talking about the task force, because you were asking me, how do we post it? Or do we need to post it?
Mm-hmm.
And I would think that it's a open meeting to discuss regulations, to discuss requirements that would be of an interest to the town, so I said, yes, post them. And I assumed, which I guess, you never assume, I assumed that the Board of Health had some input in appointing or selecting these people. So, and as you said that first Monday, if you go back, I think you will recall that there were people who were not invited who came because it was posted. So how many meetings have the Board of Health members, how many meetings have any of you attended?
I attended one. Unfortunately, they're in the daytime, and we all work in the daytime, so it's not easy for us to be able to go to the meetings.
Okay, which, I mean, and if I remember correctly, when this bylaw was put on the warrant, and we came to the Board of Health, and the Board of Health was trying to get them to not put it on the warrant, the argument was, we don't need it on the warrant because we can get regulations done within 60 to 90 days. You could have regulations done within 60 to 90 days on this, and that was the reason to persuade us not to put it on the warrant, because you could get them done without it. And we said, well, then there's no harm in putting it on the warrant then, because, and one of the arguments at town meeting was that you didn't need it because you could do the regulations without it. And yet, here we are, 4 months later, 5 months later, and the regulations aren't done. That wasn't the concern then. And, you know, I mean, you can go back, if you don't mind, Madam Chair. We had one of the residents come up at the beginning of the meeting, and I just want to correct a couple of things. We did not appoint, no one appointed, because he said I had a hand in the appointment of the Buzzards Bay Coalition, the consensus. What happened was the Buzzards Bay Coalition had contacted me and said, because this has been a very contentious thing, and asked a couple of people on the other side that would be able to sit in a room with me. That's how contentious it's been. And anyone else. And 4 of us sat down and thought about the types of people to be at it. When the consensus was completed after the months of working on it, it was stated that half of them didn't sign it, or almost half didn't sign. I will tell you that there were things I disagreed with in there, but in the effort of good, you know, consensus building, I held my nose and signed it. And then I find out that almost half of them didn't sign it, and yet you guys have those half that didn't sign it, that are trying to repeal it, are sitting on your nitrogen consensus. So I don't understand, how do you expect regulations when these people were opposed to it in the beginning?
I'll answer the question. I was not part of the nitrogen consensus meeting. I never attended a meeting. I don't know anything about that. I do know that the Board of Health and myself had no part in the repealing of the nitrogen zero bylaw at town meeting.
And I never said you did. However, you were invited. You were invited. The conservation agent was invited. I believe municipal maintenance was invited. The water pollution control facility was invited, because it was a volunteer Saturday morning that anyone could go. These were people that we thought were stakeholders that would have an interest in it. So you're absolutely right. You weren't mandated to be there. You weren't required to be there. This was a consensus of interested parties. You were not there. So I'm not trying to say that this was a plan or anything, because you're right. You weren't there. But when that came through, like I said, the people that did not sign it are the people that are sitting trying to write your regulations. Now, does that make sense? Why wouldn't you be looking for people to help you with regulations that are interested in it, not ones that want it defeated?
I guess I can say that I've never seen a list of the people that were in the consensus group. I don't know who they are or who they aren't, so I don't know who is a part of this committee.
Look at the
Sure.
Excuse me,
signatures. If I could, please. I think that part of the issue that we have is that there's, you know, there was really no process involved here that we can be responsible for, that in terms of who was put on the committee. So if we can, you know, go back to process, how people just showed up, and so now there's this ad hoc subcommittee that isn't quite sure if it's subject to any open meeting laws or any of those kinds of things, and I know that that's caused some. So what I'm after is process, and maybe we need to back up a little bit in the process and look at what you've got for a subcommittee that your health agent is overseeing, and possibly start the committee with again, a process instead of just a sort of open-ended invitation, and let's make it a what's the word I'm trying for? A verifiable, confirmable process, not just an ad hoc situation that's going to leave people open to open meeting law violation, appointment questions, all of those sorts of things that you heard the gentleman speak to earlier this evening. We kind of left ourselves a little wide open here, so what I'm suggesting is that we could possibly go back and review where we've gone and start that particular process of having a valid, legal, legitimate subcommittee of the Board of Health be duly installed in this. You know, I know that we're a little bit behind the power curve, and backing up is not always our greatest move, but sometimes we need to legitimize the process, and I think that that will help the situation in terms of getting a balance of people on your committee that are looking forward. I appreciate Mr. Rasmussen's remarks earlier that, you know, despite everything, you seem to be making some progress, but I also have concerns, as Mrs. Ekstrom has expressed them, that we need to try to balance the process out and look at what we're really doing here, because you're really opening yourselves up to these kinds of criticisms, and obviously opening the Board of Selectmen up to the same types of criticisms. So
who should make the appointments?
well, it's a Board of Health subcommittee.
If it is a subcommittee of the Board of Health, then the Board of Health would make the appointments. But a member of the Board of Health should be there if it's your subcommittee.
Madam Chair.
And maybe you want to consider having
maybe you don't
your
need-
subcommittee meet in the evening when one of you is available. Mrs. Winslow?
I understand all the concerns, but first I want to thank everybody who has volunteered to work on this project. I think, in my own mind, that nitrogen net zero is a great goal. I agree. It's not something that's easily achievable. The technology doesn't exist, and that writing these regulations probably feels like you're trying to climb Mount Everest with your bare hands. I don't want to be an impediment to the progress that has been made. I am very grateful to the coalition for coming in and giving us assistance in this very difficult matter. We, on one hand, want to talk about smart growth and economic development and things like that, and unfortunately, these regulations need to be written so that we don't create a burden to the very things that Mr. Andrews put a lot of work into this weekend. We want this. There does need to be a balance. I think if there's a working group, and there's a work group, these meetings are held in a public place in a publicly posted time that anybody can go to and be a part of. I don't want to be a part of interfering with that. I'm not sure where any violation would be. There's no appointed committee. There's no establishment of a subcommittee. This is not an ad hoc committee. This is a group of people who stop in and say, this is what I think.
Well, unfortunately, that's not what council has advised the town, Mrs. Winslow.
I'm not going to comment on that part, Madam Chair, but
Well, I think that we need to take it into account.
And if I may, Madam Chair, it is...
Excuse me, could we have order
Excuse
in the
me?
room, please? Thank you.
I was going to say, these meetings, whether they were rightfully appointed or not, they are taking on the demeanor of a subcommittee meeting. They are posted. There are emails that are going out to a set group of people stating that there are set times and dates for them to meet, that there are attachments that say, these are the parts we've already worked on, these are the parts we're looking at next. There have been drafts, as Mr. Rasmussen has said. There 7, I believe you said. There have been 7 drafts. This is not just, oh, come on and have a cup of coffee and give us your 2 cents. These have been consistent, steady meetings to try to accomplish this. So whether, and I believe the chairman is correct that whether it's appointed improperly or not, The fact is that if we have people that are working on writing regulations for this town, I think that everyone has a right to know who's on that committee, what, if they have disclosures that they should be filing, to file those disclosures, to participate in those meetings so that people know where these regulations are coming from and from what vantage point they're coming from. And one more thing, I understand, believe me, I have been an advocate for economic development in this town, but I will tell you, you go down into Oakdale and you tell those residents that $25,000 betterment isn't a burden to them. Because you know what? I don't think that saying, well, we can't slow up development or we can do this. It's not
I
anything
didn't say
about-
that.
Well,
That's not what I said.
Excuse
Okay,
me.
please.
What I'm
Please,
saying
ladies.
is that we have to, development, it has to be responsible development, because you know what? Our environment and our waterways, they don't come back.
Okay, I appreciate that, the relevancy that the economic development issue has to the discussion of Board of Health regulations for nitrogen net zero, but that's not the point before us. The point before us is to try to get a valid process in place so that none of us are open to the criticisms, and that we can address the concerns that have been expressed both by the gentleman who was sitting here earlier this evening and other people in the community, and other duly appointed committees of the Board of Selectmen, such as the Clean Water Committee, who are duly appointed under the charter, under the authority that's vested in the Board of Selectmen to create committees as we deem them necessary. So we would like to have an inclusive process. We'd like to have a valid process and a legitimate process that we can get, hopefully, a reasonable set of regulations out in a reasonable amount of time. And I do appreciate the fact that this is something new and it's innovative, and I think that it's a good thing for our community, because clean water is clean water is clean water is clean water, and I don't think there's anybody who doesn't value clean water. How we get to the clean water is, of course, therein lies the rub. But, and I don't want anybody to think that I don't appreciate everything that you all do and are part of, because I do. I think every volunteer and board and committee is valued, but sometimes we just need to tweak things a little bit to make sure that we are valid and legitimate in our processes. And so that is why I was, again, there's not an appointing authority vested in our Board of Health agent, even though he's, trying to do the best that he can, and that you have sort of given him that. It really doesn't work that way. So,
Madam Chair, just for
Mrs. Winslow.
clarification, is it council's opinion that a group of citizens who come together to work on an issue that impacts the town, that should be a duly appointed committee? And do we have that in writing?
I believe that we have had some people express that. Yes, the town council has discussed that, and it's not a group of people just showing up. This is a very specific task that has been assigned by the Board of Health agent, and it's improper to do it that way. That's not a valid way to set up the process. And that's been noted by town council, and he has. We're trying to fix what was done improperly. That's the whole point.
And if I may, Madam Chair, the consensus group was not appointed by anyone. It was people that came together. The nitrogen panel, the elusive nitrogen panel, is a private group that is
not
meeting in
under the
secret,
auspices
so
of the
it's
town.
not here.
It's a little bit different. It becomes a different issue.
This was through town meeting, and it's Board of Health regulations that they're writing. So it should be a town event or a town,
It is.
thing.
I mean, it is. It's
Right, it
happening
is.
here under the auspices of the Board of Health, at the direction of the Board of Health to the health agent, which is what makes it different than the consensus group. That really was not attached to a town. It was facilitated actually by a gentleman who is a facilitator by trying to bring groups together in a very volunteer way across towns and across groups of people. So I think that that it's very, very different characterization, a very different category of activity than what we were doing here in the town hall at appointed times with a semi-subcommittee not really quite done properly.
Okay.
If I may, Madam Chairman, we have,
Sure.
since the first meeting, we were a little bit confused. We did not post a meeting. Every meeting, there's been 8 in total. Every meeting after that has been posted. Every meeting after that, the coalition has taken minutes of the meeting. The minutes of the meeting have been sent by email to all members that show up. As people come to the nitrogen meetings for their own input, we add them to an email list. Everybody gets an email about the minutes of the meeting. So I think we have...
Well, Mr. Ethia, just let me ask you this. Who votes on whether or not these regulations are going up and down? Who is a voting member of your group that
There are no voting members.
they-
We're just establishing the regulations. They will go before town council, they'll go before the DEP, and then the board will vote whether they want the regulation after that. That's their jurisdiction.
Well,
not
I think
mine.
that therein lies the rub. I mean, if you have a subcommittee who is making recommendations to you, they need to be saying yay or nay by majority
And it should, right.
vote of the subcommittee. I mean, there may be 3 people on the subcommittee who are saying, yes, we want it done this way, and 5 people are saying, no, we don't want it that way. But how do you tell who's the voting members? How do you decide whether it's a majority opinion of what goes forward to the Board of Health ultimately, and what you're voting on and deciding? How do you know who was on your committee and who was voting in favor or against, say, the fee or the the other things that were mentioned earlier, whether or not the fee for trade-offs for the offsets, that kind of thing? I mean, I think it would be important to you to understand how the committee actually voted and why, in addition to the minutes. I mean, minutes are telling, but you should have voting members.
If I may, there have been no votes taken. We're just reviewing the regulations, and as we go along, the consensus of the group, can we move along? We look at one part of the regulation. Everybody want to agree with this? Can we move along? And then it's just a model, very rough bylaw at this time. Nobody takes any votes.
Regulation.
Yeah, it's not a regulation yet, but it's a bylaw to propose this regulation. And in answer to your question about why we couldn't get it in 60 days, I think that the nitrogen bylaw that was voted in made it a little more difficult because we're in now some form that we had to follow. Not that we could have done it in 60 days, and I think that Mark will agree, and everybody at that meeting that we have, this nitrogen meeting, will agree that it's a lot more than we ever thought it was going to be. There's so many things involved in this to get it right. And the DEP agrees, the representative from the DEP, Jonathan Hobel, just about everybody, including members of the Clean Water Committee, agree that this is not as easy as we thought. So if we thought we could get it in 60 days, I'm sorry, we were sorely mistaken.
Well, if I may, Madam Chair, just when we were just talking about, Mr. Ethia said how that there's a consensus, can we agree on this or come to a consensus and move on? That is, I mean, the way it's going right now, that consensus thing, you're going to put in front of the Board of Health, who, by their own admission, just said, we're not familiar with any of this. So that is one of the reasons why I would think more than ever, it would be an appointment process that they would actually be involved, sitting at the table, so that they understand what these regulations mean.
Madam Chair.
It will be your regulations. I think that's kind of a fair statement. I'm not trying to,
I don't want
slough it
anybody
off.
to get the impression that I don't take this very seriously, but I see this as an issue for the Board of Health. And I think that this is their charge. And I think that once we appoint them to the Board of Health, they're essentially an autonomous board. And I think we can advise and guide them all we want, but I don't think that we should be telling them what to do. I'm hearing people use words like subcommittees, ad hoc committees, committees, but what I'm getting back from the folks that are attending these is that this is a work group. If I show up there at the next meeting, you add me to an email list and I say, hey, I don't like that idea, and somebody makes a note of it. I'm just having a hard time grasping what the whole problem is, and it sounds to me like there's significant progress that's been made and that we're receiving a lot of assistance both from the coalition and from the DEP is going to step in and give us some assistance, and these these regulations have to be crafted correctly, or we could face litigation, because you've got right of use issues and
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. Could we please not have any shouting out from the audience? Thank you. That's exactly the whole point. If you're going to have regulations that are going to be voted on by the Board of Health and adopted by the town, then we think that we are giving advice and guidance, and we are hoping that the Board of Health will take our advice to heart and get a more legitimate process in place for putting the regulations together. That's expand upon what you're already doing. Don't drop out anything that you've done already, but make it a more official process, please, because I think that if you don't, we could be putting ourselves in jeopardy, exactly as Ms. Winslow suggested. So,
well, no, I was suggesting that when, in reference to the coalition providing some legal counsel, some of these issues are going to be land use issues and right of use issues, and
I'm not suggesting that they should not be part of the committee or part of the advice to the committee at all in any way, shape, or form. Of course, we welcome their assistance. So,
But as they said at the onset, that these will have to go through town council for approval. We're not going to take, nothing personal, but we're not going to take the coalition as the legal authority on these. They don't want us to take it. They can certainly give advice, but the bottom line will be town council that will say whether it's legal or not.
well, I thank you again for. I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, just a quick footnote, if I
Mr.
might.
Andrews?
Mr. Ethia, you and I have talked about this, and we're obviously the key parts here with regards to potential exposure. I think town council attended one of your meetings and did advise, whatever the group was, whatever you want to call it, that you need to adhere to the open meeting law. That's a very important factor in our town council's representation of what he saw that particular day. So as you go forward, I would respectfully ask you to do that and do it within, you can't be just a little bit in compliance, I guess is my point. You got to be in compliance or not in compliance. So if we're not in compliance, I just want to be very clear from the town administrator's standpoint that I don't want to expend funds where we already received advice from council as to how this should be operated under the Board of Health. You need to follow that advice and do it so with the serious vein in which it was given. So that's my advice, and any way I can help going forward, I think it's important to have that. But we've already gotten that advice openly at one of your meetings, and some of the members at those meetings can't just stand up and say, or whatever they did say, because the council reported back to me that, well, we might adhere here, we might not adhere there, or however it's going to go. It's all or nothing as it relates to the new open meeting law, and that's important to protect the town from any liability going forward. And once again, I pledge my support in any way that I can help.
Madam Chair, can I just ask through you to the town administrator that we get a written opinion on what his feelings were that day? Please.
Happy to, Madam Chair.
Thank
I
you.
think, Bob, was it clear to you that day when Attorney Bowen did give his advice at that meeting?
Yes, sir, it was. And it was
Okay.
clear also that we were following exactly what he said. We did
Okay.
post the minutes. We did keep minutes. We did post the meetings. The only thing, there's been some charges, if you will, and I intend to respond to the Attorney General against those charges because I do not believe that it's in violation of the open meeting law.
Well, thank you. You have to respond to him. The Board of Health has to respond to them, and I'm sure they will respond in the appropriate amount of time. And that, you can defend yourselves adequately. That's great, but there are those open meeting law regulations are put in place to protect the public, and people have the have the right to file open meeting law. I mean, it's been my goal for this year to not have an open meeting law violation because it's a really not a good thing. So if you can defend yourself adequately against those, that would be excellent. But in the meantime, now you've found yourself faced with that, and you do have to respond. The Board of Health has to respond. So because it's the violation is against the Board of Health, not against the health agent. You do understand that, right?
I don't quite understand that because town council told me just today that the body has to respond. The nitrogen committee body has to respond. Therefore, we have to have another meeting, and we have to discuss it at that meeting and get their opinion to send to, right? Do you agree?
Well, I believe that there were, think it was 3 names that were actually identified as, wasn't it 3 names that were identified as the culprits for? Okay, the culprits, if you will.
I'm one of
mean,
them.
The
I'm one of them.
allegations. You're one of
yeah,
the allegations.
Yeah, that, you know,
Right, and the chairman of the Board of Health. So it is, you know, it's, there's enough to spread around.
right,
We had nothing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
right, you have
I thought
nothing
you
to
said
do with
you
it.
were.
Right.
No,
so-
but it names them in there as repeated or offenders of it, or they weren't even at the meetings and they didn't receive any emails. And the emails were about the consensus group that I had nothing to do with, nor did I ever, I received them, but they went to the
Well,
whole
like
body.
I said, then I'm sure you'll make your
I'll do my best.
response to the Attorney General as best as you can.
Now, if we
Could
take it, we go ahead and appoint a committee, shall we say, does that committee need the approval of the Board of Selectmen?
A subcommittee?
Yes.
No, I don't believe so.
No, I don't believe so either. You are.
But if it's a subcommittee of the Board of Health, then a Board of Health member has to be part of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, and I do hope we get to net zero nitrogen regulations, because clean water is clean water is clean water, and I wish we could at least agree on having clean water. That seems to me to be pretty basic, and I know you all agree to that, but community at large has some issues with it, so.
And if you are going to appoint a committee, it may be in your interest to get people on it that are in favor of it. That's all I have to say. Thank you. I mean, I know there's a couple that are, but the majority is not.
Thank you for your advice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have an appointment of an associate member to the Council on Aging Board of Directors. This was placed on the agenda at the request of our liaison, appointee, a liaison, Mr. Holmes. Couldn't be here this evening.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
my concern is that we just got back the Attorney General's approval of the new bylaw, which creates 2 associate positions on the Council on Aging. And we do have 2 applicants on file to the Council on Aging. However, we have said in the past that whenever we have openings come available, we are going to alert the public and give them an opportunity to apply. We have not done that since we just got back the packet from the Attorney General. And I think it's only fair that if we're going to appoint these positions, that we do it in accordance with the policy that we set at that workshop we had about 6 months ago.
I believe, Madam Chair, did you just say this was put on by Steve, who is our appointment czar, I think is what we referred to him as, that this was ready to go?
Yes, at
Well,
the
then-
request of Mrs. Winslow earlier today, I contacted Mr. Holmes, and his explanation for putting it on this evening was that this candidate, that we did have the Attorney General's information back, that we had been sitting on this appointment process for a number of months, and that people were very aware that vacancies existed on the Council on Aging, and that this candidate has met all the prerequisites. She's been interviewed, she's been recommended by the Council on Aging, and she has also been to a number of their meetings, actually 6 months' worth of their meetings. So that is why he thought we should not wait for this appointment any longer. I actually, well, I won't say that because I don't want to hurt feelings other places, but that's okay. So
Well-
that's why it's on, and that's where it is.
Madam Chair, as I said to you many months ago, right after Mr. Riley left, we had an opening on the CETA board. We had Mr. Brady come in and interview for that, and at that time we told Mr. Brady, since we were bringing on a consultant, we didn't want to fill that position, and we voted for that. And so we do have other people who've waited many, many months, and that still hasn't been addressed. So I'm not sure what a couple of weeks difference makes at this point.
Well,
but
while I appreciate somewhat the relevancy of your argument, I don't think that the CETA board and Mr. Brady has anything to do with the Council on Aging and the situation that was involved here with the AG's office. And so I agree with Mr. Holmes that we should take this up this evening after I saw it on the agenda and said, what the heck is this doing on the agenda? He had gone to the office and asked them to put it on, and so it's here. And my feeling is that we should act on it, so.
I'm going to respectfully disagree. I think we set a policy. We didn't have anything back from the AG's
Well,
office.
You know what? Don't throw the policy up, okay? Madam Chair, I make a motion to appoint Lynn Burrows as an associate member to the Council on Aging Board of Directors for the Town of Wareham to a term to expire no later than June 30th, 2012.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Abstain. It's 2-1-0. Next item on the agenda is the sewer connection request for 9 Elm Street. Mr. Campina, please.
Good evening, Madam Chair,
Thank
members
you.
of the board.
Could you make sure you talk into the mic, Mr. Campina,
I'm going to do my
please?
very best. Okay. This is Mr. Assad, who actually asked me on the agenda this evening in regards to 7-9 Elm Street. This came to my attention a little while ago, and I've done some research on it, and it goes way back. I spoke to Mr. Goyette about this before his passing, and he gave me some good information. I'm just sorry I didn't get to him earlier. This involves the Tremont Nail Factory and the property across the street, which is owned by Mr. Assad. And I believe it was on your agenda in 2010, and I tried to find out what that disposition was, and I didn't get that in time.
There was no disposition at the time. The board took no action.
Okay. So Mr. Assad would like to tie in his building, the building that's presently there, and tie it into his existing system. And I'd like to point out to the board that he owns that pump station. We've maintained it. We've paid the electricity on it. It's been our responsibility. We upgraded it. It's tied to our generator. It's a three-phase system. He doesn't have three-phase at his facility. So when they originally built this, it was all one, and it was split. The town owns half, and he owns his half. So I had said to Mr. Assad that any connection, it's his system, and there was a sewer development fee charged to the original owners, which would be Tremont Nail, and Mr. Goyette approached this, and then it was abated to them. Their cost was up close to $200,000 to put this system together. I wasn't involved in the town purchase it, but when the town purchased it, they just purchased their side, and they've been maintaining the whole shoot and match. So I said to Mr. Assad that I would request that he pay us back. And we dug up the bills and things that we've paid for in that system, and he takes control of his system and maintains it from this day forward. So that's something I'd like to address tonight and get some type of disposition on that. Irregardless if he ties in or not, I think he needs to take ownership of his system. We don't own it. So that's the very least I'd like to accomplish this evening. As far as I understand, he has a stub there to tie into his system. It was put there originally, I believe, for the Ferrin Tavern, and I called those folks, and they didn't want the stub that's already there in place. And there's a big plan. I tried to cut them up for you folks, and she just said, should I bring the plans? But there's an original set of plans for that whole entire development. So what Mr. Assad is asking is to tie in his building that's there, tie it into his system. He owns that system, along with, I would suggest, the estate of Mr. Goyette at Mill Pond Diner. They're co-owners of that part of the street. So I told him that he would definitely be responsible for a sewer connection fee, which we'd update to today's standard, which is approximately $3,062. And then he'd be responsible for the charges of us maintaining that system since 2006 and all the costs that we put into that. that the ratepayers have paid for. And then at the same time, if he's approved, then he is to hire somebody to maintain that system. And then the dilemma we have is that to give him the electricity with three-phase, he doesn't have three-phase. So we'd have to figure out a way to bill him regularly to pay the electricity on that facility. So this is why we're here tonight.
This seems like a rather complicated issue to me.
Well, yes, ma'am.
I understand you're trying to come up with some sort of an agreement that is acceptable to both the town and solves Mr. Assad's problem, and it's admirable that Mr. Assad is willing to pay the back costs that the sewer users have paid. That's the amount of $12,894.14.
Yes, and he'd split that with the estate of Mr. Goyette because they're co-owners of it. And I said to him that'd be his responsibility to chase them down because I didn't do that. If you would like me to split the bill, then I could do that also and bill Mr. Goyette, his estate, and Mr. Assad because as I read this, in the original, and I talked to Mr. Goyette and he had just gotten home from the hospital, and because I felt for him, I suggest we put the meeting off. And hindsight is always good, and of course he passed in that time frame. But one of the things he did say to me is that he could possibly move it to the power to the pump station to his facility because he has three-phase. But now with him not there, it's something he'd have to broach the estate with. Mr. Assad would have to broach the estate with, and they can make a decision. But as far as the town, we assume no responsibility of that pump station, but we have an electrical problem because it's on our part that has a three-phase, which is the Tremont Nail proper, Tremont Nail that we own. And we're not using our station. Our station doesn't pump. He does all the pumping on his side, so that's how we could generate the bills because we pay the bills regularly. They come to us. We pay them. We've been paying them for quite some time, and we're firing up his side of the bill, his side of the street.
That bill's only amounted to $3,062.52.
Yes, it's two pumps. They run alternating back and forth. Yes, for the 4-year period. Yes, ma'am.
And we don't have anything from Mr. Goyette in writing that.
No, and I really kicked myself because he invited me over, but he had just gotten home from a treatment. He had bone marrow, and I refused to go over, and I kicked myself, not to belabor it, but I refused to go over in hindsight because he was going to pull all that out for me, and I asked him to rest, and I'd get back to him. So I'd have to present it to his estate, and I don't know who would have that, whether it be his wife or whoever had. I don't really know, so I was going to leave that to Mr. Assad. I felt he had a close relationship and put it on his shoulder and then have him chase the other half of the money through the estate. And that may be unfair, but however you direct me, I'll definitely...
Well, you can't put that bill on my shoulder.
Well, I understand.
Have me go to the diner.
Well, I was hoping you had a better relationship than I, but...
Whoa, not for $12,000.
I can split it.
Mr. Assad?
No, it's... Biff owns 2/3 of that.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Winslow.
can I just suggest, because I've been watching Mr. Assad's reaction, and I think, and Mr. Campino, I understand what you're trying to do, but I don't think that we can address this with only one party present. I think we are going to need, if the diner's going to be...
He's dead.
But there's got to be somebody responsible.
He's dead.
Mr. Assad, thank you. We'd like to be a little respectful of Mr. Goyette and his family.
But
yes, we
there
understand that he's passed. Thank you.
But there is still a property owner to that property, I believe Selectman Winslow is trying to get you, whether it is the estate or whomever. And I believe that we should probably not, while you're saying you can split it, now he's saying he wants it 1/3, 2/3. So I think that you need to, whether it's you through an attorney, through the estate, whether you want to do it and come up with something that's agreeable to both sides before we make a decision on it.
Absolutely. Make a decision on what? I've got that building rented. It's been 2 years I've been trying to get sewer and water in there. Make a decision on what? 3 years in probate?
No, the decision that I believe, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, is what do we do with this? There's a maintenance issue that two people have to decide on.
We can do that.
No, because you're going to tie another building into the system, and we need to get some type of answers before we just continue on. That's
All I need
why I was trying
tonight
to
is
get it on.
permission to hook up the sewer and water. We can negotiate all this out, sir.
Madam Chair, he
can.
has permission to do that on a letter dated 2006. His letter addressed to this letter is to inform you that Tuesday, July 11th, 2006, the Board of Selectmen Sewer Commissioners voted to approve the application for sewer connection for Sandra A. Assad, 7 Elm Street, Lot B1 on Assessors Map 132, subject to the following conditions. So he's been approved to tie in. That's his. And I don't know why he hasn't. And that's why I was asking about the disposition of the last time he had, but he has permission.
Did you want to speak to that, Mr. Assad?
Beg your pardon, ma'am?
Did you want to speak to this letter that was sent to you
no,
July
you-
13,
we
2006?
had Fields Engineering come in and present to this committee, the planning board, a very, very detailed plan on how we propose to use the land on Elm Street. And at considerable expense to us, the engineering company came in and did all the permitting. I mean, I don't know. You see me. I snap like a branch. This is a situation where we honestly feel that it shouldn't have gone on this far, this long, that I have the right to hook into that system. I pay every year, 4 buildings, a sewer use fee. Okay. So, I just want you to tell me, Madam Chairwoman and members of the selectmen, that, okay, this letter is honored. It was given by this committee, and that tomorrow I can go dig a hole and put the sewer in and connect the sewer. I'll pay the bill, okay? I'm going to negotiate this $12,000 bill, and I don't owe that.
And I believe that, if I don't want to speak for Selectman Winslow, but I believe that is the one we were speaking about.
Correct.
As far as the paperwork we have, you were approved to tie in, 7 Elm Lot B1, Assessors Map 132. You were approved to sign into that in July of 2006.
Yes.
So,
I was confused as to why he hadn't, and he hadn't. He said there was a problem, and so when I started looking into this, the problem just got deeper as far as the financial end of it. And one thing that I'm going to be adamant about is that that's his pump station. And fine, he can tie into it, but he needs to maintain it from this day forward. He needs to get a maintenance agreement, somebody in there that's going to maintain it, because that's part of the responsibility
Absolutely.
of that station. And so I want to make sure that that's tied into his tying in.
Oh, you can guarantee that. Yes, absolutely. You can make that a condition.
I just want to make sure that we all understand each other, though. Whatever the fees are, and however you're going to split them, that's not an issue that we can enforce for you. You know what the fees are. Unless you get this all taken care of in advance.
I think we're going to have to negotiate that, Ms. Wilson, because I didn't mean to disrespect Biff. I love the guy. He was a beautiful man, okay? But Biff and I had agreed long ago that it was a 2/3, 1/3 split on the electric, primarily because we were only using the old company store. I mean, what do we use?
But
couple of ladies want to use the restroom?
Right, and I understand that, but I just want to make sure that you understand that that split is an issue between you and Mr. Goyette's estate.
Okay, but
It's
who's
not.
going to be billed for this now?
Well, going forward, from what I understand on the paperwork that Mr. Campina has given us, you are to have a maintenance agreement in place and a copy submitted to us for renewal of said maintenance agreement, and that you agree to pay the electrical costs going forward for the pump station. Now, the back pay
We can negotiate?
costs could be negotiated
Oh, that's wonderful.
between you and,
That guy has been wonderful here. He's just worked double time and overtime. I'm just frustrated.
And I understand that, but I just want to make sure that we're clear with each other.
We have two issues here.
You have, well, yes, but one of those issues is between you and Mr. Goyette's estate.
I don't know how I'm going to solve it, but we'll work
But
towards
what
it.
I'm saying is you understand that we can't enforce any type of agreement that you may have had regarding this sewer.
No, because there never was one.
Okay, but I just want to make sure that you don't come back a year from now and say, I've paid all these bills and now I want half or two-thirds or what,
No,
because we
no.
can't do anything to help you.
Certainly not without justification or proof. And we can't do that. Okay, we can prove we've been paying the sewer use fee since we bought the property from Tremont, okay? And I think Guy's assessment of charging us a monthly electric fee is very fair, okay? I have no problems with that whatsoever. The original sewer hookup fee from 2006, I think is fair, okay? And I would like to proceed because the building has been rented to another retail store, which is our goal on Elm Street, the shops on Elm Street. So this will be the third shop now opening on Elm Street. It's a high-end bike shop, and if you drive by the building, we're working on it every day. It's a pretty building. And, you know, that's my goal. I mean, I'm never going to get anything out of it. It's for my kids, all right? But this 2 years waiting to tie into a sewer is ridiculous. So I would like your permission, ladies, to allow us to hook up the sewer at our earliest convenience, work with Guy to pay these back bills and negotiate their payment, and put Guy in charge. He's very well, he works for the town and he does a wonderful job.
Madam Chair, if I could.
Mr. Andrews.
Thank you. I'm just astounded that this has gone on for 4 years. Mr. Campina, you've been on the job for, what, 4 months?
6 months, yes.
6 months? See how time flies? I'm just astounded. I'm looking at some of these letters from other officials of the town, and to work with business and industry is one of our goals, to get that out. And I do agree with Member Winslow. We can't effectuate an agreement between you and another private party. So that's your responsibility, or your lawyer's responsibility.
Okay.
But certainly, Guy, you've spent enough time on this. And the question that I would have, just real quick, if you had to do this all over again, how would you do it?
If I had to do this all over again, I would tie them in, and then I would sit down with two parties and work this bill out and be done with it.
Thank you.
I don't think there's, correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Chair, but I believe that the tie-in was authorized
Yes.
That's correct.
July of 2006.
Everything was...
So you can, there's nothing preventing you, sir.
No, it was the previous sewer commissioner who wouldn't let me tie in.
Okay, I don't know anything about that.
No, I
Not
don't-
sewer commissioner,
Right,
superintendent.
Superintendent. And
Superintendent.
I thought he was a wonderful man. I thought he worked very hard for the town.
Okay.
And I was too sick to argue with him.
No, I understand, and I wish you the best, and good luck.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to the bike shop.
And there are other things we have planned for there over the years, God willing. We'll see.
But Madam Chair, if I could, just real quick, where's the follow-through? That's my point on this. If we are going to assist in moving this, the approval's there. Whatever we have to work out as a private matter between the parties, as presented, that's what you need to do, Mr.
Well, I have
Saab.
no animosity towards the town, Mark.
I know
They've
you-
always been very, very supportive of me. This is a wonderful place with really wonderful people.
Okay.
Don't blame anybody.
I'm not blaming anybody. I just want to see businesses move forward to get what they need to do business.
And you've
That's what I'm saying.
always been on top of it, and I
Okay.
appreciate that.
Okay, great. Thank
Madam
you.
Chair, if you will, I'll try to coordinate the meeting between these two gentlemen. For the
I would like to
space.
formalize in a vote the agreement that Mr. Assad will pay the electrical costs going forward, and that he has to have a maintenance agreement on the pump.
And that I can hook
Because-
up right away?
Well, you can hook up right away, but I think that these two things are conditional. And then the split of the back fees that are owed, that can be negotiated in the future, but going forward, I would like it to be clearly understood, and part of the motion of this board to,
Ratify the initial vote.
right, exactly, and that there is a maintenance agreement in place, and Mr. Assad will maintain it, and that he'll pay the electrical costs going forward.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Now go
Well-
hook up.
Thank you.
Great bunch. It was worth waiting 3 hours.
Consider it quality time, Mr. Assad.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, Mr. Campina. Thank you. Okay,
Here's
we
some
have
bills.
a bill from CDM. invoices number 7 and 8.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the Sewage Works Improvements, Cromisa Park and Oakdale Sewers Contract Number 2, CDM Construction Services, invoice numbers 7 and 8. Actually, strike 8. Let's just I'll do them separately. For invoice number 7, oh, they didn't divide these up.
Yeah, they did
How do you-
18,000 and 18,000.
Oh, okay, hold on. So invoice number 2, contract 2, invoice number 7, for $18,376.21.
Is there a second?
18,376.21.
They're both for the same amount of money.
Oh.
They're equal amounts
But-
of money that add up to $36,450.39.
Isn't that what we asked for them to correct last week?
Was there a correction to be made on this bill from last week?
I thought that's why we didn't vote on last week. There was a problem.
Guy, can you come back up? On the-
I think it was just the cover letter that was incorrect.
Okay.
Well, these, if I may, both of these, well, let me see if I've got it right here. 80365049-16, 65049-16. So these are the same invoice. So we have two invoices here that are the same invoice number that we're going to pay twice?
No, I guess we're not going to
I
do that.
think that's where we were going last week with
Right.
Mrs. Winslow, so.
Madam Chair,
The other one is on the back, I'm sorry. If you look at the back, nope, that's the same bill.
No,
We
it's
have
just,
one
they're all the
invoice.
same.
We only have one invoice here.
Just one.
Mr. Andrews.
Just do the one.
Yes.
But their letter, the CDF,
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we table this matter till April 5th, 2011 for corrections.
Okay, I see that invoice 8 is the 803650449/16. That is the invoice 8, and that's the one that we have in the packet. It's clear that they copied the second invoice twice, but why don't we,
when
do
three
we
they
want to,
had.
right, do we want to approve 803650449/16 and then have them come back with 13 properly?
That's what I would recommend, Madam Chair.
I'd rather them correct the cover letter too, because it's confusing.
no, the cover letter makes sense, because it has 13, which is number 7, which we don't have a copy of.
Right.
Do you have the original?
We have a, excuse me,
Do you
Madam
have the
Chair.
original for the chairman to sign, Mr. Andrews? I'm sorry. If we have it in there, we could do it off of those.
I suggest that we do this, get clarification in the morning at the trailer tomorrow morning, if I could.
Yes, we have an 8
just to be
o'clock meeting
absolutely
with
Okay.
CDM.
All right,
So
we
next-
can-
So I can go
next
over
week.
that.
Next
We
week?
don't need to
Again.
make a motion.
Okay.
We just put that on the agenda for next week for the two of them.
Sure. Do you want to do the minutes next?
Please.
You want a copy, Guy?
I make a motion to approve the Board of Selectmen meeting minutes of May 13th, 2010.
Second for discussion.
Mrs. Ekstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was not an executive session, but the final motion, or if it was an executive session, there's no reason why we went into executive, so
You want to amend to adjourn?
I want to amend it to, well, I don't know, because it says roll call throughout it, so it would look like it's executive, but there is no reason why we went into executive. I'm looking at it.
Madam
Do you
Chair?
remember?
Yes, I do believe, and you are correct, I don't think that these minutes are completely sufficient. I do believe that was the evening that we had the discussion related to the Bay Point issues when we met jointly.
I don't think so.
Wasn't that right before Chris left?
Oh, this is May 13th, though.
No, this is to hire a consultant. He wanted to hire a consultant. And I can't imagine why we would have done that in executive session.
I mean, there wouldn't be a reason, but you wouldn't have roll calls.
Why don't we hold these minutes until we
Thank
can
you.
ask
Okay, I
Mr.
withdraw my
Cruz?
motion.
Thank you, and I'll withdraw my second.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee minutes dated July 28th, 2010.
Second, for discussion.
Yes, ma'am.
Under the Finance Committee listing, the final one says Claire Smith, moderator. While I'm sure Mrs. Smith is very aptly, would be successful on the Finance Committee, I believe that she should be moved up to others present, as she's not a member of the committee. And I also think that we should take the word executive session out of the motion at the end, because this one was definitely not. It was a special meeting, but it definitely was not an executive meeting.
Madam Chair, may I add to that we may want to add Mr. Holmes? There's no mention of Mr. Holmes.
Oh, that he was absent.
He was absent,
Right. So members absent also.
Okay, so the motion is made with the amendments to note Mr. Holmes's absence, to remove Mrs. Smith from the Finance Committee listing, and to remove the word executive session. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous. Will you see those corrections, Mr. Andrews?
I'm right here, Madam Chair.
Okay, that's that, that's that, that's that.
We're almost done, right? I'm going to make a motion to go beyond the hour of 10.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. We just have a couple of quick things. Westfield discussion is on the agenda. We met with the Westfield Review and Recommendation Committee on Saturday at 11 o'clock. They are wrapping up their review of the RFP. We had a very, very productive meeting on Saturday. They anticipate that they will be, the RFP will be completed and turned over to us within a week. And then the board will put it out for bid. So it's a pretty good product. They've worked very hard to make the corrections and recommendations. We had some discussion about the recreation fields being protected. We had that discussion here at the board before, that the contractor, it was confirmed that the contractor would not be able to charge fees for those fields that were, had funds contributed from CPC, but that section of property is confined to the recreation fields. So we seem to be good to go with that project. So I'll thank the Westfield Review and Recommendation Committee, and I'm sure the board will look forward to their recommendations and review of whatever proposals received by the town for the project. Is there any other town business? There was a letter in response to our discussion on where we could hold our polling places. And they had a couple of interesting solutions, potential solutions to our not being able to vote at the schools. In the 2012 year, the school department will construct its calendar to ensure that students will not be in attendance during the March and April elections. They're proposing a warrant article to be written for submission at fall town meeting to change the annual town election to a Saturday.
Unbelievable.
And they are, I don't know how that will work for November elections. And during fiscal year 2013 and beyond, the school district will construct its calendars to not have children in school during state and federal elections. So they're looking forward to working with the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator to solve any and all problems before us. This is always great discussion after the fact. I wish we had had this discussion before the fact, but obviously it's a matter that could have been easily resolved with more communication, so. Mrs. Ekstrom?
I was going to say, I wish you had read the letter because I agree with you that had this been discussed, I don't know, 3 years ago, rather than just summarily making decisions, unilaterally making decisions as superintendent, you know, now it's coming back with, you know, with other reasons. When you read it, the timeline, well, whatever. But I hope that the superintendent is still planning on coming in here next week as we had asked him to come in. And I think that when there's a decision like that to be made, you know, it affects the entire town. It affects the citizens, you know. Chairman Donahue had mentioned last week, and I concurred about the number of people that don't vote because it's not in their neighborhoods anymore, who used to vote all the time. And I think that if, you know, if just about every other town in the Commonwealth can come up with this, or come up with a solution, rather than changing the charter, which, by the way, trying to go to Saturdays, I believe it failed when it was proposed last year. So I think that maybe if this had been widely known at that time, maybe it would have had a different effect on it. I don't know, but I think that when you're going to unilaterally make a decision that's going to affect 15,000 registered voters, I think that it is something that definitely will come forward, should come forward, and I hope he does plan on coming here to discuss it next week as we requested.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Winslow?
I just want to, well, I want to point out a couple things. The first is that the issue wasn't new. I mean, it was something that had been discussed prior. I think that it's a great idea, especially if we are able to coordinate the school calendar to match up with elections, because then we can use all the elementary schools, which means that folks in Onset who were once voting at Hammond can go back to Hammond. And I want to thank Dr. Rabinovich, because I did call him the morning after the meeting and asked him why we can't coordinate a school calendar, if that was a possibility. The contracts are open, can use professional days, and other ideas. And I think that, and I hope that is something that we can work out, because I did get several calls throughout the week from people, especially in Onset, who really want to go back to the Hammond School to vote. So.
And I absolutely concur with you, and it would have, you know, as I said, it would have been wonderful, and I think it would be wonderful if we go back to this, to go back to Hammond. But just so you know that the day after when you called him, that wasn't a new suggestion. That had been proposed a couple years ago when it was unilaterally decided.
And I can't speak to that, but
Let's not argue back and forth about it, ladies. It's late, and this is, you know, I know. Let's not just discuss it back and forth. All right, we have a response. It would have been better if we had had the response before unilateral decisions were made, and it came to this point. It's moving forward at this point, so let's try to keep it moving forward. I'm sure the people will speak about whether or not they want to vote on Saturdays, and they have already spoken on it once, but is there any other town business? Do we have any liaison reports? Okay, then, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you and good evening.